A single weapon changed the destiny of an entire warrior culture. This is the story of how one Mandalorian created something that would shape galactic history for over 1,000 years. Let's set the scene. Over a millennium ago, something happens that nobody thinks is possible. A Mandalorian joins the Jedi Order. Not just any Mandalorian either. This is Vizsla, a warrior from one of the most powerful clans on Mandalore. The Mandalorians and Jedi have been enemies for centuries, fighting wars that leave entire star systems in ruins. But somehow, this one man bridges that gap. Tar does something no Jedi has ever done before. He builds a lightsaber unlike anything in the galaxy. Most lightsabers have cylindrical blades that glow with bright colors: blue, green, purple, red. But Tar creates something different. His blade is flat like an ancient sword. Black energy pulses along its edges. The weapon is shorter than normal lightsabers, but feels heavier in ways that go beyond simple weight. This becomes the Darksaber, the only one of its kind in galactic history. Back on Mandalore, Tar becomes something special. The warrior clans watch as one of their own masters, both Jedi teachings and Mandalorian traditions. He proves you can be strong in the Force and still honor the old ways. His lightsaber becomes a symbol of everything Mandalore could be: power balanced with wisdom, strength guided by purpose. The clans start following him. House Vizsla leads the way, but others join too. They see the Darksaber as proof that Mandalorians don't have to choose between their culture and something greater. Tar unites warriors who have spent generations fighting each other over territory and honor. Eventually, Tar rises to rule all of Mandalore. The planet that gave birth to some of the galaxy's greatest warriors now has a leader who commands both armies and the Force. Under his rule, Mandalore becomes more than just another warrior world. It becomes a power that even the Republic has to respect. The Darksaber represents everything Tar accomplished. Its black blade shows that power can come from unexpected places. The weapon becomes tied to Mandalorian leadership in ways nobody planned. When people see the Darksaber, they think of unity. They think of strength. Most importantly, they think of legitimate rule over Mandalore. But Tar doesn't live forever. When he dies, his lightsaber faces a problem. Jedi tradition says lightsabers belong to the Order, not individuals. The weapon that united Mandalore ends up in the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, locked away in archives like some museum piece. For generations, the Darksaber sits in storage. Jedi Masters walk past it without understanding what they're looking at. To them, it's just another lightsaber built by a member of their order. They don't see the symbol that once united warrior clans across an entire planet. The Mandalorians don't forget, though. Stories pass from parent to child about Vizsla and his black blade. How he proved Mandalorians could be more than raiders and mercenaries. How his weapon brought their scattered people together under one banner. These stories matter because they keep hope alive. Even while their greatest symbol sits in Jedi hands, Mandalorians remember what unity felt like. They remember having a leader worthy of following. The Darksaber becomes more than just a weapon in their collective memory. It becomes the key to everything they lost when Tar died. House Vizsla especially remembers. They're Tar's descendants, the inheritors of his legacy, even if they can't inherit his blade. They tell stories about their ancestor who walked between worlds and brought honor to both. They dream about the day when the Darksaber might return to Mandalorian hands. The weapon waits in the Jedi Temple archives, surrounded by other relics and artifacts. Dust settles on its handle while galaxy-spanning events happen around it. Wars start and end. Governments rise and fall. Heroes are born and die. But the Darksaber endures, patient as stone. Nobody knows that this period of waiting is almost over. Forces are already moving that will bring the blade back to Mandalorian space. The descendants of House Vizsla are planning something that will shock the Jedi Order and change Mandalorian history forever. The peaceful years are ending. Soon the archives will be violated, the temple will be robbed, and the Darksaber will begin a journey that leads through centuries of war and betrayal. The weapon that once brought unity to Mandalore is about to become the prize that tears it apart. But for now, it waits. Black Blade silent in the darkness, holding power that nobody in the galaxy truly understands. The Force flows around it like water around a stone, carrying whispers of the conflicts to come. The first chapter of the Darksaber's story is ending. Tar Vizsla's dream of a united Mandalore fades into legend, while his weapon gathers dust on Coruscant. The next chapter will be written in blood and fire, as House Vizsla reclaims what they believe belongs to them. And once they have it back, they'll discover that some symbols carry curses as well as blessings. Sometimes the greatest heists in galactic history happen when nobody expects them. The Jedi thought their temple was the safest place in the galaxy. They were wrong. The old Republic is falling apart. Government systems that worked for thousands of years suddenly stop functioning. Corruption spreads through the Senate like poison. Wars break out across the galaxy as worlds fight for independence or conquest. The Jedi Order tries to keep peace, but there are too many fires and not enough water. House Vizsla watches this chaos and sees opportunity. For generations, they've told stories about their ancestor Tar and his black blade. They've passed down legends about what Mandalore was like when the Darksaber united their people. Now, with the galaxy in turmoil, they decide to take back what they believe belongs to them. The raid on the Jedi Temple becomes the stuff of legend. Warriors from House Vizsla somehow penetrate the most secure building on Coruscant. They fight their way through corridors where Jedi younglings train and masters meditate. Their target is the archives, where ancient artifacts gather dust while the galaxy burns outside. The Mandalorians find what they came for. Tar Vizsla's lightsaber sits in storage, forgotten by everyone except the descendants who never stopped dreaming about it. When they lift the weapon from its resting place, they're not just stealing property, they're reclaiming their heritage. The escape is as daring as the infiltration. House Vizsla warriors fight their way out of the temple with Jedi trying to stop them. But Mandalorian armor and weapons prove their worth against lightsabers and force powers. The raiders disappear into Coruscant's endless cityscape, carrying their prize back to Mandalorian space. The theft changes everything. The Darksaber stops being a Jedi relic and becomes something much more dangerous. A symbol of Mandalorian independence. Proof that their warrior culture can take on the galaxy's most powerful institutions and win. Back on Mandalore, House Vizsla uses their reclaimed weapon to do exactly what Tar did centuries earlier. They unite the clans under their banner. But this time, unity comes through conquest rather than inspiration. The Black Blade becomes a tool of war as much as leadership. Clan after clan falls in line behind House Vizsla. Some join willingly, drawn by the power the Darksaber represents. Others require more convincing. The weapon that once brought peace to Mandalore now spreads across battlefields where Mandalorian fights Mandalorian. Blood stains the black blade as House Vizsla strikes down anyone who opposes their rule. The consolidation works. Within years, House Vizsla controls all of Mandalore. The scattered warrior clans become a unified force again, organized around the ancient symbol of their greatest leader. The Darksaber transforms from family heirloom into the crown jewel of Mandalorian power. This new unity comes with a price. The weapon develops a reputation that goes far beyond Mandalore's borders. Stories spread about the black lightsaber that cuts down Jedi. Pirates and smugglers whisper about Mandalorian raids where the Darksaber appears on battlefields across the galaxy. The blade starts accumulating a body count. Jedi who try to retrieve the stolen weapon die on its edge. Republic officials who threaten Mandalorian independence meet the same fate. The Darksaber becomes known as a Jedi killer, a weapon that can stand against the galaxy's most powerful warriors and win. Generations pass. The Darksaber moves from father to son, from clan leader to clan leader, always staying within House Vizsla. Each wielder adds to its legend. Each battle increases its reputation. The weapon becomes more than just a symbol of leadership. It becomes proof that Mandalorians bow to no one. Mandalorian society changes around the blade. The new Mandalorians rise to power, preaching pacifism and diplomacy instead of conquest and war. They want their people to join the galactic community as equals, not conquerors. But House Vizsla refuses to abandon the old ways. The Darksaber becomes their secret. While public Mandalore embraces peace, the descendants of Tar Vizsla preserve warrior traditions in hidden bases and private training grounds. They keep the Black Blade safe, waiting for the day when Mandalore will need its true strength again. This underground existence shapes House Vizsla in ways nobody expects. Cut off from mainstream Mandalorian society, they become more extreme in their beliefs. The Darksaber stops being just a weapon or symbol. It becomes their entire identity, the proof that they represent real Mandalorian values while everyone else has gone soft. The weapon's history grows darker with each telling. Stories about Jedi dying on its blade become central to House Vizsla's identity. They celebrate these deaths as victories against oppression. The black lightsaber becomes a symbol of resistance against anyone who tries to control Mandalorian destiny. Vizsla inherits this legacy along with the weapon itself. He grows up hearing stories about his ancestors who stole the Darksaber from the Jedi Temple. He learns about every battle where the Black Blade tasted Jedi blood. By the time he becomes leader of House Vizsla, he sees himself as carrying on a holy mission. When Vizsla finally meets a Jedi face to face, he can't resist boasting about his weapon's history. The blade was stolen from the Jedi Temple by his ancestors, he explains. Since then, many Jedi have died on its edge. Each death proves that Mandalorians will never bow to anyone, not even Force users who think they're above ordinary warriors. This boast reveals everything about what the Darksaber has become. The weapon that Tar Vizsla created to bridge two cultures now represents their eternal conflict. House Vizsla sees every dead Jedi as validation of their beliefs. The Black Blade becomes proof that their way of life is worth preserving no matter the cost. The transformation is complete. The Darksaber has gone from symbol of unity to weapon of division. from bridge between cultures to barrier between enemies. The theft that brought it back to Mandalorian hands also corrupted its purpose, turning it into something Vizsla never intended. But House Vizsla doesn't care about their ancestors' original vision. They have their own plans for the galaxy, and those plans require enemies to fear the Black Blade's return. The weapon that once brought peace to Mandalore is about to plunge it into the most devastating war in its history. The stage is set for everything that follows. House Vizsla has their symbol, their weapon, and their cause. All they need now is the right moment to strike against the pacifist government that's abandoned Mandalorian traditions. When that moment comes, the Darksaber will light the fires of civil war. A governor with a secret identity is about to tear apart an entire planet. On the surface, he serves a peaceful government. In the shadows, he leads the deadliest terrorist organization in Mandalorian space. The Clone Wars are raging across the galaxy, but Mandalore stays out of the fighting. Duchess Satine Kryze runs a pacifist government that's banned weapons and warfare from their society. The new Mandalorians wear flowing robes instead of armor. They solve disputes with words instead of blasters. Their capital city, Sundari, looks more like an art museum than a fortress. But peace has enemies. Vizsla lives a double life that would make any spy jealous. During the day, he serves as governor of Concordia, one of Mandalore's moons. He attends government meetings, files reports, and plays the part of a loyal official. People see him as just another bureaucrat working for Duchess Satine's administration. They have no idea what he really is. When the sun sets, Vizsla becomes the leader of Death Watch. This terrorist group wants to destroy everything the new Mandalorians have built. They plant bombs in peaceful cities. They attack government facilities. They recruit warriors who remember when Mandalore was feared across the galaxy instead of ignored. The Darksaber makes Vizsla more than just another rebel leader. When he draws the black blade from the scabbard on his back, he's carrying centuries of Mandalorian history. The weapon proves his bloodline connects directly to Vizsla, the greatest leader their people ever had. Traditional Mandalorians see the ancient lightsaber and remember what their culture used to be. Vizsla knows exactly how to use this power. He's been trained since childhood in the Darksaber's combat techniques, learning secrets passed down through generations of House Vizsla. The blade feels natural in his hands because it belongs there. This isn't some stolen weapon or political prop. It's his birthright. Death Watch operations become more daring with each passing month. They sabotage government buildings while wearing traditional Mandalorian armor that's been illegal for years. They broadcast messages calling for the return of warrior traditions. Most importantly, they show the galaxy that pacifist Mandalore isn't as unified as it pretends to be. The Darksaber appears in every propaganda video Death Watch produces. Vizsla ignites the Black Blade while giving speeches about Mandalorian honor and strength. The weapon's dark energy pulses as he talks about overthrowing the weak government that's abandoned their heritage. Traditional warriors across Mandalore watch these broadcasts and feel their blood stirring. Recruiting becomes easier when you have the ultimate symbol of Mandalorian leadership. Warriors who might ignore some random terrorist group pay attention when they see the Darksaber. The weapon carries authority that goes beyond politics or ideology. It represents legitimate rule over Mandalore, passed down through the proper bloodline for generations. Vizsla uses this legitimacy to build Death Watch into something more than just another rebel group. They become a shadow government with their own military structure, training facilities, and political goals. The organization attracts Mandalorians from every walk of life who feel betrayed by their pacifist leadership. The governor's position gives Vizsla access to government secrets that help Death Watch stay ahead of security forces. He knows when raids are planned, where investigations are heading, and which officials might be getting suspicious. This inside information makes Death Watch nearly impossible to catch or stop. But the real power comes from the Darksaber itself. Vizsla wears the weapon openly during Death Watch meetings, the black hilt visible against his blue and gray armor. Other warriors see their leader carrying Vizsla's blade and know they're following someone with the right to rule Mandalore. The weapon's history adds weight to every word Vizsla speaks. When he talks about restoring warrior traditions, the Darksaber proves he's serious. When he promises to overthrow Duchess Sabine, the ancient blade shows he has the authority to do it. The lightsaber becomes both symbol and threat, representing everything Death Watch fights for. Traditional Mandalorians start seeing Vizsla as more than just a rebel leader. He becomes the rightful heir to Mandalore's throne, temporarily displaced by pacifist politicians who've forgotten their people's true nature. The Darksaber makes this claim believable in ways that mere words never could. Death Watch training camps spread across Mandalore's outer systems, hidden from government surveillance. Here, warriors practice with traditional weapons while learning combat techniques that have been banned for decades. Vizsla oversees much of this training personally, the Darksaber always visible on his back as a reminder of what they're fighting to restore. The organization's goals become clearer with each attack. They want to remove Duchess Sabine from power and install a government that honors Mandalore's warrior heritage. They want to end the planet's neutrality in the Clone Wars and pick a side that will benefit Mandalorian interests. Most importantly, they want their people to remember what it means to be warriors again. Vizsla positions himself as the natural leader of this new Mandalore. His bloodline connects him to the greatest period in their history. His weapon proves his legitimate claim to rule. His organization shows he has the military strength to back up his political ambitions. The stage is set for civil war. On one side stands Duchess Sabine with her pacifist government, supported by the new Mandalorians who want peace and prosperity. On the other side waits Vizsla with Death Watch, backed by traditional warriors who remember when their people conquered half the galaxy. Between them lies the Darksaber, the weapon that will determine Mandalore's future. Vizsla carries it into every battle, knowing that whoever wields the black blade rules their people. The ancient lightsaber has chosen its side in the coming conflict. But Vizsla doesn't know that other forces are moving in the shadows. The Clone Wars have attracted attention from beings who see opportunity in Mandalore's division. Soon, Death Watch will face choices that test whether their traditional values can survive contact with true evil. The Darksaber has found its champion in Vizsla. Now it waits to see if that champion can deliver on his promises to restore Mandalorian greatness. The weapon that once united their people under Vizsla is about to discover if it can do the same thing again, or if this time it will destroy everything it touches. The moment every Mandalorian warrior dreams about is about to happen. For the first time in generations, the Darksaber will face a Jedi in combat. Obi-Wan Kenobi arrives on Concordia following leads about terrorist attacks on Mandalore. The Jedi Master thinks he's investigating simple political violence, He has no idea he's about to discover the most wanted criminal in Mandalorian space, hiding in plain sight as a government official. The investigation leads Kenobi through Concordia's mining tunnels and industrial complexes. This moon processes raw materials for Mandalore's peaceful cities, but something feels wrong. The workers seem nervous. Equipment that should be mining ore looks more suited for military production. When Kenobi follows his instincts deeper into the facility, he finds something that changes everything. Death Watch has turned Concordia into their secret base. Hidden beneath legitimate mining operations, they've built training facilities, weapons factories, and command centers. Mandalorian warriors in traditional armor practice combat techniques that have been banned for years. The pacifist government thinks these weapons were destroyed, but Death Watch has been building an army right under their noses. Vizsla knows his secret is blown the moment Kenobi appears in the hidden complex. There's no point in maintaining his cover as a loyal governor anymore. The Jedi has seen too much, learned too much, represents too great a threat to Death Watch operations. So Vizsla does something that sends shockwaves through both organizations. He reveals who he really is. The Darksaber ignites for the first time in front of a Jedi since House Vizsla stole it from the temple. The black blade crackles with dark energy as Vizsla steps forward, no longer pretending to be anything other than what he is. A terrorist leader, a traditionalist warrior, the rightful heir to Mandalore's throne. Obi-Wan stares at the weapon with recognition and horror. He knows what he's looking at, even if he's never seen it before. This is the lightsaber stolen from the Jedi Temple, the weapon that's killed members of his order for centuries. The blade that represents everything the Jedi and Mandalorians have fought over since their first contact. Vizsla can't resist explaining the weapon's history as they circle each other. This lightsaber was stolen from the Jedi Temple by his ancestors, he tells Kenobi. Since then, many Jedi have died on its blade. Each death proved that Mandalorians would never bow to Force users who think they're superior to ordinary warriors. The psychological warfare works as intended. Obi-Wan realizes he's facing more than just another terrorist with a stolen weapon. This is a blood feud that goes back generations, a conflict between cultures that see the universe in completely different ways. Then the fighting begins. The duel showcases everything that makes Mandalorian combat doctrine so effective against Jedi. Vizsla doesn't rely only on his lightsaber skills. His armor deflects strikes that would cripple an unprotected opponent. His jetpack gives him mobility that matches Force-enhanced agility. His weapon systems turn the entire battlefield into a war zone. Whistling birds launch from his armor, forcing Obi-Wan to deflect multiple projectiles while defending against lightsaber attacks. Flamethrowers create barriers of fire that even a Jedi can't simply walk through. The Darksaber itself moves differently than normal lightsabers, its flat blade and shorter length requiring different defensive techniques. For a few moments, Vizsla actually holds his own against a Jedi Master. His training with the Darksaber, combined with Mandalorian technology and tactics, creates problems that pure lightsaber skill can't easily solve. The black blade locks against Obi-Wan's blue saber, while rockets and flames fill the air around them. But there's a reason Obi-Wan Kenobi sits on the Jedi Council. His defensive fighting style, perfected through decades of combat, gradually turns Vizsla's aggression against him. Every rocket fired is a resource spent. Every flamethrower burst creates openings for counterattack. The Mandalorian's technological advantages start working against him as much as for him. Obi-Wan's skill with a lightsaber eventually overcomes Vizsla's tricks and gadgets. The Jedi Master reads his opponent's attacks through the Force, anticipating moves before they happen. When Vizsla commits to a strike that leaves him exposed, Obi-Wan is ready with a response that ends the fight. The defeat is total and humiliating. Vizsla, the rightful heir to Mandalore carrying the legendary Darksaber, loses to a single Jedi. His weapon that's supposed to be a Jedi killer fails against the first Force user it faces in actual combat. The man who built his entire identity around Mandalorian superiority gets beaten by someone representing everything he opposes. But Obi-Wan doesn't kill his defeated opponent. The Jedi Code forbids executing prisoners, even terrorist leaders who've killed innocent people. Instead, he tries to arrest Vizsla and bring him to justice through legal channels. That's when things get complicated. Duchess Satine's presence on Concordia creates a tactical problem Obi-Wan can't ignore. She represents the legitimate government of Mandalore, but she's also someone he cares about personally. When Death Watch forces threaten her safety, Obi-Wan has to choose between capturing their leader and protecting an innocent person. The choice isn't really a choice at all. Obi-Wan abandons his pursuit of Vizsla to ensure Duchess Satine escapes safely. They flee Concordia together while Death Watch regroups around their defeated but still living leader. Vizsla survives the encounter, but his reputation takes damage that might never heal. The warrior who carried the legendary Darksaber lost a fair fight to a Jedi. His followers watch their leader get outmatched by someone they've been taught to see as weak and corrupt. Death Watch has to retreat deeper into hiding after their base gets exposed. Their operations on Concordia are blown, forcing them to find new places to train and plan. The organization survives, but it's weakened and scattered. Most importantly, the duel proves something that threatens everything Vizsla believes. The Darksaber might be a powerful weapon with an impressive history, but it's not magic. It won't automatically defeat Jedi just because previous wielders killed Force users. Victory still requires skill, strategy, and favorable circumstances. This lesson will haunt Vizsla as he rebuilds Death Watch and plans his next moves. The Black Blade didn't guarantee victory against Obi-Wan Kenobi. If the Darksaber can't deliver on its reputation when it matters most, what does that say about the rest of Mandalorian tradition? The weapon that was supposed to prove Mandalorian superiority has instead shown that symbols and legends aren't enough. Raw power means nothing without the skill to use it properly. And sometimes, even skill isn't enough when facing someone who's simply better. Vizsla will remember this humiliation for the rest of his life. The Darksaber failed him once, but he won't let it happen again. Next time he faces a Jedi, things will be different. He'll make sure of it. Sometimes the darkest moments reveal who people really are. Vizsla is about to show the galaxy what the Darksaber means to him when innocent lives hang in the balance. Death Watch has fallen on hard times since their defeat on Concordia. Their secret base got exposed, their operations disrupted, and their leader humiliated by a Jedi Master. Vizsla needs allies, and he thinks he's found them in the Separatists. Count Dooku promises support for Death Watch operations in exchange for help destabilizing the Republic. But that alliance falls apart faster than anyone expects. The Separatists have their own agenda, and it doesn't include sharing power with Mandalorian terrorists. Vizsla discovers that working with Sith Lords means being used by them, then discarded when convenient. Death Watch retreats to Karlak, a frozen world where they can lick their wounds and plan their next move. The planet's native Ming-Po people find themselves hosting unwelcome guests who treat their world like conquered territory. Vizsla sets up camp without asking permission, takes what supplies he needs, and makes it clear that Death Watch will stay as long as they want. The Ming-Po endure this occupation because they have no choice. Death Watch warriors outnumber them, outgun them, and show no interest in negotiation. Village leaders try to maintain peace while hoping these dangerous visitors will eventually leave on their own. Into this tense situation walks Lux Bonteri, a young separatist politician with his own agenda. He brings a companion who calls herself his betrothed, though something about her seems different. The woman keeps her face hidden and speaks little, but she watches everything with eyes that miss nothing. Her name is Ahsoka Tano, and she's a Jedi Padawan infiltrating Death Watch to gather intelligence. The disguise works initially because nobody expects a teenage Jedi to walk voluntarily into a terrorist camp. Ahsoka plays her role perfectly, acting like a young woman smitten with her politician boyfriend. But the facade can't last forever. Not when Vizsla decides to send a message about what happens to people who cross Death Watch. The Ming-Po chieftain makes the mistake of speaking up for his people. He tells Vizsla that Death Watch has taken enough supplies, caused enough disruption. The village needs these visitors to respect their hosts or find somewhere else to set up camp. It's a reasonable request delivered with dignity and courage. Vizsla sees it as defiance that requires correction. The execution happens in front of the entire village. Vizsla ignites the Darksaber and forces the chieftain to kneel while his people watch in horror. This is justice for Mandalore, he explains. The Jedi and their allies have committed crimes against his people for generations. Now it's time for some payback. The black blade raises above the chieftain's neck, ready to deliver a killing stroke that will terrify the Ming-Po into total submission. But then something unexpected happens. A young girl, no more than 10 years old, throws herself between the Darksaber and her grandfather. She doesn't hesitate, doesn't think about the consequences, just sees someone she loves in danger and acts on pure instinct to protect him. Her small body interposes itself between the ancient weapon and its intended target. Vizsla doesn't hesitate either. The Darksaber cuts through the child like she's made of air. She falls dead at her grandfather's feet, while Vizsla shows no remorse for what he's done. This is what happens to people who oppose Death Watch, he tells the horrified villagers. Remember this lesson well. The moment breaks something fundamental in Ahsoka's soul. She's seen violence before, fought in battles where good people died. But watching an adult murder a child for the crime of loving her family pushes her past any point of compromise or understanding. Her cover becomes irrelevant in the face of such brutality. Ahsoka reveals herself as a Jedi and demands that Vizsla stop this slaughter immediately. The disguise falls away as she prepares to fight every Death Watch warrior in the camp if necessary to prevent more innocent deaths. Vizsla almost can't believe his luck. A Jedi has walked right into his hands, giving him a chance to redeem his humiliating loss to Obi-Wan Kenobi. This time will be different. This time, he'll prove that the Darksaber can fulfill its reputation as a Jedi killer. The teenager standing before him looks like easy prey compared to a Jedi master. Ahsoka appears young, inexperienced, emotional. She's also unarmed, having left her lightsabers with her ship to maintain her disguise. Vizsla sees an opportunity to restore his reputation by killing a Jedi in front of witnesses. Death Watch warriors surround Ahsoka before she can reach her weapons. They capture her easily, binding her hands while Vizsla gloats about what's going to happen next. He'll execute this Jedi slowly, painfully, making sure her death serves as both revenge and propaganda. But Vizsla underestimates both Ahsoka's resourcefulness and her loyal astromech droid. R2-D2 creates enough chaos to give Ahsoka the opening she needs to break free and reclaim her twin lightsabers. Suddenly, the helpless prisoner becomes an armed and extremely angry Jedi. The duel that follows showcases how much Ahsoka has learned since becoming Anakin Skywalker's apprentice. Her twin green blades move in patterns that confuse opponents used to fighting single saber wielders. She attacks from unexpected angles, using her smaller size and greater agility to stay ahead of Vizsla's heavier strikes. Vizsla fights with all the fury and skill that made him Death Watch's leader. The Darksaber spins and weaves as he tries to corner his opponent, using every Mandalorian combat technique his ancestors taught him. His armor deflects glancing blows, while his weapon systems create multiple threats for Ahsoka to handle simultaneously. But the Padawan has advantages that go beyond her Jedi training. She fights with righteous anger over the murdered child, giving her strikes emotional weight that matches their physical force. She also fights with the clear conscience of someone protecting innocence rather than conquering them. The turning point comes when Ahsoka targets Vizsla's jetpack with a precise lightsaber strike. The damaged propulsion system starts malfunctioning, throwing off his balance and disrupting his attack patterns. What should be a tool giving him tactical advantage becomes a liability that makes him vulnerable. Vizsla tries to continue fighting despite the equipment failure, but his timing is off and his movements predictable. Ahsoka presses her advantage without mercy, driving him back until he can no longer mount an effective offense. The man who killed a child to make a point finds himself outmatched by someone barely older than his victim. Instead of finishing the fight, Ahsoka uses the opening to escape with Lux Bonteri. They flee Karlak while Vizsla rages about letting another Jedi slip through his fingers. The Darksaber has failed him again, this time against an opponent who should have been easy prey. The encounter leaves Vizsla with more questions than answers about his weapon and his cause. The blade that's supposed to make him invincible keeps losing to Jedi who shouldn't be able to match Mandalorian skill and technology. Maybe the problem isn't with his enemies, but with his expectations. But rather than examining his own limitations, Vizsla chooses to blame external factors. Ahsoka was lucky, he tells himself. The jetpack malfunction was a fluke. Next time he faces a Jedi, circumstances will be different. The Darksaber's history gains another dark chapter with the murder of an innocent child. The weapon that once united Mandalore under a noble leader now serves someone who kills civilians to make political points. The corruption is complete, transforming symbol of unity into tool of oppression. Death Watch's reputation suffers more damage from this incident. Killing children doesn't win hearts and minds, even among traditionalist Mandalorians who want their warrior culture restored. Vizsla may think he's showing strength, but he's actually revealing weakness that will eventually destroy him. Vizsla is about to make the worst decision in Death Watch history. When you shake hands with the devil, you better be ready for the consequences. Two dark figures arrive at Death Watch's hidden base on Zanbar like refugees from a nightmare. Darth Maul looks like something that crawled out of hell itself, his red and black tattooed face marking him as a creature of pure malice. His brother Savage Opress towers beside him, enhanced by Night Sister magic into something barely recognizable as the being he once was. Both Sith have survived encounters that should have killed them. Maul endured being cut in half and falling down a reactor shaft, living through hatred alone until his brother found him. Savage survived his own transformation from simple farmer into Darksaber weapon. They're renegades now, cast out by their Sith master and hunted by enemies across the galaxy. Vizsla sees opportunity where others might see danger. These aren't ordinary refugees seeking shelter. They're powerful Force users with their own agenda, their own army, and their own reasons to hate the current galactic order. Maybe Death Watch can use that hatred for their own purposes. The negotiations happen quickly. Maul leads something called the Shadow Collective, a criminal alliance that brings together the galaxy's most dangerous organizations. The Hutt clan controls smuggling routes and criminal territories. Black Sun runs assassination networks and illegal weapons trade. The Pike Syndicate manages spice distribution across multiple star systems. Together, these groups command resources that dwarf anything Death Watch has assembled. They have armies of mercenaries, fleets of ships, and enough credits to buy whole governments. Most importantly, they have the infrastructure to destabilize entire planets without leaving fingerprints pointing back to their real masters. Vizsla proposes a deal that benefits both sides. The Shadow Collective helps Death Watch conquer Mandalore, and Death Watch provides the criminal alliance with a legitimate government base of operations. It's the perfect partnership between political terrorists and organized crime. The alliance's first test comes on Nal Hutta, homeworld of the Hutt crime families. The Grand Council of Hutts needs convincing to join Maul's Shadow Collective, and some of them resist the idea of taking orders from outsiders. Vizsla and the Darksaber provide the persuasion they need. The throne room of the Hutt Palace becomes a slaughterhouse when negotiations break down. Nikto guards rush to protect their criminal masters, but they're facing weapons and skills they can't match. Vizsla ignites the Darksaber and cuts through their ranks like they're made of paper. The Black Blade moves with deadly efficiency, each strike taking down another guard while the Hutts watch in growing terror. Vizsla fights with the fury of a warrior who's been denied his destiny for too long, channeling years of frustration into every swing of his ancestral weapon. The message is clear. Join the Shadow Collective willingly or face the consequences of resistance. The Hutts, practical creatures despite their criminal empire, choose survival over pride. They agree to Maul's alliance rather than risk more demonstrations of what the Darksaber can do to their personnel. With the crime syndicates unified under Shadow Collective leadership, Vizsla and Maul turn their attention to the real prize. Mandalore sits under Duchess Satine's pacifist rule, unaware that enemies are gathering to destroy everything she's built. Operation Mandalore launches with coordinated attacks across Sundari that seem random but follow a carefully planned pattern. Shadow Collective forces plant bombs in government buildings, attack police stations, and generally create the kind of chaos that makes ordinary citizens desperate for someone to restore order. The beauty of the plan lies in its deception. Nobody connects these criminal attacks to Death Watch because the terrorists haven't claimed responsibility. The violence appears to be ordinary criminal activity that's gotten out of control, threatening the peaceful society Duchess Satine has worked so hard to build. Then Deathwatch arrives like heroes responding to a crisis. Vizsla leads his warriors through Sundari's streets with the Darksaber blazing, fighting the same criminals his organization secretly allied with. The performance is flawless, with Deathwatch appearing to risk their lives protecting innocent Mandalorians from dangerous outsiders. The Darksaber becomes central to this deception. When Vizsla wields the ancient weapon against Shadow Collective forces, he's showing the Mandalorian people that their true protectors carry the symbols of their heritage. The Black Blade represents everything their pacifist government has abandoned in pursuit of peace. Public opinion shifts exactly as planned. Mandalorians who supported Duchess Satine's policies start questioning whether pacifism can protect them from real threats. Deathwatch warriors carrying traditional weapons and wearing ancestral armor look more appealing than police officers with stun batons and non-lethal crowd control methods. The coup unfolds over days as Deathwatch systematically takes control of Sundari's key locations. They present themselves as emergency responders, helping overwhelmed government forces, gradually assuming authority over security operations throughout the capital. Vizsla positions himself as the reluctant leader forced to take charge during a crisis. He carries the Darksaber openly now, no longer hiding his identity or his organization's goals. The weapon legitimizes his claim to power while demonstrating his commitment to Mandalorian traditions that Duchess Satine allegedly betrayed. The plan works perfectly, too perfectly for Vizsla to resist the temptation of ultimate betrayal. With Sundari under Deathwatch control and public opinion turned against the pacifist government, he no longer needs his Sith allies. The Shadow Collective has served its purpose and can be discarded. The arrest happens during what Maul thinks is a victory celebration. Deathwatch warriors surround the two Sith brothers, weapons drawn and ready to fire. Vizsla explains the new reality with cold satisfaction. Mandalore belongs to Mandalorians, and outsiders are no longer welcome. Maul and Savage find themselves locked in prison cells, victims of their own successful conspiracy. They helped Deathwatch conquer Mandalore only to discover that their partners never intended to share power with non-Mandalorians. The alliance that seemed so beneficial has turned into a trap. Vizsla believes he's won everything. Deathwatch controls Mandalore's government and military. The Darksaber legitimizes his rule in the eyes of traditional Mandalorians. His enemies are locked away where they can't threaten his new regime. But Vizsla has made a critical error in judgment. He's betrayed partners who don't forgive betrayal. Maul survived being cut in half through sheer hatred, and now that hatred has a new target. The Sith Lord who built a criminal empire from nothing won't be contained by simple prison bars. The alliance that brought Deathwatch to power is about to destroy everything Vizsla has worked to achieve. He wanted to use Maul's strength for his own purposes, but strength like that can't be controlled forever. Soon the Darksaber will face its greatest test against an enemy who understands power in ways that Mandalorian tradition never taught. Vizsla thinks he's won the game by betraying his allies. He's about to discover that some games have consequences that go far beyond winning or losing. The Darksaber that brought him victory is about to cost him everything, including his life. Prison bars can't hold a Sith Lord driven by pure hatred. Vizsla is about to learn that some enemies are too dangerous to betray and expect to survive. The escape happens faster than anyone thinks possible. Death Watch sympathizers within their own ranks help Maul and Savage break free from their cells, proving that Vizsla's betrayal created divisions he didn't anticipate. Some warriors still believe in honoring deals, even with dangerous allies. Maul doesn't waste time on revenge speeches or elaborate plans. He marches straight to the throne room where Vizsla holds court, flanked by Death Watch officers who think their leader's position is secure. The Sith Lord has come to collect what he believes is rightfully his. The challenge echoes through Mandalorian history. Single combat for leadership, winner takes everything. It's the oldest law their warrior culture recognizes, more fundamental than politics or personal loyalty. When Maul invokes this ancient right, Vizsla can't refuse without losing face in front of his own troops. Vizsla accepts the duel with confidence that turns out to be his greatest weakness. He's beaten Jedi before, or at least held his own against them. This outsider might have force powers, but he doesn't understand Mandalorian combat doctrine. The Darksaber has never failed its rightful wielder in single combat. Except Maul isn't just any force user. He's a trained Sith assassin who's survived encounters that would kill lesser beings. His hatred burns with the intensity of someone who's lost everything and clawed his way back from death itself. More importantly, he's fought lightsaber duels against opponents who make Vizsla look like an amateur. The combat begins with Vizsla using every advantage Mandalorian technology provides. Wrist rockets launch from his armor while he swings the Darksaber with deadly precision. Flamethrowers create barriers of fire that force Maul to keep his distance. The jetpack gives him mobility that should match force-enhanced agility. For the first few exchanges, the fight looks even. Vizsla's weapons create multiple threats that even a Sith has to respect. The Darksaber locks against Maul's crimson blade while rockets explode around them. Death Watch warriors watch their leader demonstrate the skills that made him their commander. But Maul is playing a different game entirely. Where Vizsla relies on technology and training, the Sith Lord draws power from emotions that have been burning inside him for years. Every strike carries the weight of his hatred for betrayal, his hunger for revenge, his absolute determination to never be anyone's prisoner again. The tide turns when Maul stops defending and starts attacking with the full fury of the dark side. His lightsaber becomes a blur of motion that forces Vizsla to abandon his own offensive moves. The Mandalorian's arsenal of tricks starts working against him as he runs low on ammunition and fuel. Vizsla's jetpack becomes a liability when damaged by Maul's precise strikes. His flamethrowers run out of fuel after creating impressive but ultimately useless displays. The wrist rockets that should give him ranged superiority prove ineffective against someone who can deflect them with casual force gestures. The Darksaber itself starts feeling heavy in Vizsla's hands as exhaustion takes hold. This isn't the ceremonial dueling he practiced as a young warrior. This is life and death combat against someone who fights like killing is the only thing that matters in the universe. Maul's experience shows in every move he makes. He's fought Jedi Masters and Sith Lords, survived assassination attempts and battlefield encounters that tested every skill he possesses. Vizsla is skilled for a non-force user, but skill alone isn't enough when facing someone who's dedicated his entire existence to violence. The end comes suddenly. Maul disarms Vizsla with a combination that the Mandalorian never sees coming, sending the Darksaber spinning across the throne room floor. Without his ancestral weapon, Vizsla becomes just another warrior facing a superior opponent. Maul retrieves the fallen blade with casual ease, igniting the weapon that now belongs to him by right of conquest. Vizsla kneels before his victor, knowing that Mandalorian tradition offers no escape from this moment. He challenged and lost. The consequences are absolute. The execution happens in front of Death Watch's entire leadership. Maul raises the Darksaber above Vizsla's neck and brings it down in one clean stroke. The head of House Vizsla falls to the floor while his body crumples beside it. The man who stole the weapon from the Jedi Temple dies on its blade. With Vizsla's death, the Darksaber passes to new hands. Maul holds the weapon high while proclaiming himself the rightful ruler of Mandalore. According to their oldest laws, whoever wins the blade in combat becomes Mandalore. The title belongs to him now, outsider or not. Most Death Watch warriors accept this reality because their culture leaves them no choice. They followed Vizsla because he carried the Darksaber. Now Maul carries it, making him their leader whether they like it or not. The weapon's authority transcends personal preferences or tribal loyalties. But not everyone bends the knee so easily. Bo-Katan, Vizsla's second-in-command, refuses to acknowledge Maul's claim despite witnessing his victory. She leads the Night Owls, an elite unit within Death Watch that values Mandalorian identity above ancient traditions. Her rejection splits Death Watch down the middle. Bo-Katan and her followers declare that no outsider can truly rule Mandalore, regardless of what weapons they carry or duels they win. They abandon the throne room rather than serve a Sith Lord who doesn't understand their culture or share their values. The fracture creates immediate civil war. Maul commands Death Watch loyalists who respect traditional combat laws. Bo-Katan leads Mandalorian purists who refuse to accept non-Mandalorian leadership. Both sides claim to represent the true spirit of their warrior culture. Maul stands in the throne room with the Darksaber crackling in his hand, master of a divided kingdom. He's achieved his goal of claiming Mandalore's leadership, but his victory comes with complications he didn't anticipate. Ruling requires more than just winning fights. The weapon that brought Vizsla to power has now destroyed him. The Darksaber's history takes another dark turn as it passes from Mandalorian hands to those of an alien Sith Lord. The blade that once united their people under Vizsla now splits them apart under Maul's rule. For the first time in its history, the Darksaber serves someone who wasn't born on Mandalore or raised in their traditions. Maul may have won the weapon legally, but his rule represents everything traditional Mandalorians fear about losing their cultural identity. The throne room becomes a symbol of this transformation. Where Vizsla once held court as the latest in a line of Mandalorian rulers stretching back to Vizsla himself, now an outsider sits in the seat of power. The Darksaber legitimizes his claim, but it can't make him one of them. The weapon that was supposed to protect Mandalorian independence has delivered it into the hands of their enemies. The irony would be amusing if the consequences weren't so tragic. Vizsla's ambition to restore traditional warrior rule has succeeded beyond his wildest dreams, just not in the way he intended. Power corrupts, but absolute power over an entire planet can drive someone to acts of pure evil. Maul is about to show the galaxy what happens when a Sith Lord rules through terror and the Darksaber enables his darkest impulses. The new government of Mandalore looks legitimate on the surface. Prime Minister Almec sits in the official seat of power, making speeches about restoring order and protecting citizens from criminal elements. He signs laws, meets with officials, and generally acts like he's running the planet. The reality is much darker. Almec is a puppet dancing to strings pulled by his shadow master. The former prime minister spent time in prison for corruption before Duchess Satine's government fell. Now he's grateful for his freedom and terrified of losing it again. When Maul gives orders, Almec follows them without question. Behind the scenes, Maul controls everything that matters. The Darksaber gives him legitimacy among traditionalist Mandalorians who respect the ancient laws of combat. Fear keeps everyone else in line. The combination proves devastatingly effective for establishing dictatorial control. Many Mandalorians find themselves trapped between conflicting loyalties. They watched Maul win the Darksaber in fair combat according to their oldest traditions. By their own laws, he has the right to rule them. But he's also an outsider who doesn't understand their culture and shows no interest in learning it. The result is a population that obeys without enthusiasm. They follow Maul's orders because the alternative is worse, but they don't embrace his leadership the way they might with a true Mandalorian ruler. The Darksaber commands respect, but it can't create genuine loyalty. Duchess Satine becomes Maul's most valuable prisoner after the coup succeeds. The former ruler represents everything he's working to destroy on Mandalore, but she also represents something more personal, a way to hurt someone who once hurt him very badly. Obi-Wan Kenobi cut Maul in half during their duel on Naboo years earlier. That injury should have been fatal, would have been fatal for anyone without connection to the dark side. Maul survived through pure hatred, spending years as a broken madman before his brother restored his sanity and gave him new purpose. Now, he has a chance for the perfect revenge. Kill someone Obi-Wan loves and make the Jedi Master watch it happen. Force him to experience the same kind of loss that Maul suffered when his plans were destroyed. The symmetry appeals to the Sith Lord's twisted sense of justice. The message reaches Obi-Wan exactly as intended. Maul has captured Duchess Satine and will execute her unless the Jedi comes to Mandalore alone. It's obviously a trap, but Obi-Wan can't abandon someone he cares about to a madman's revenge. He travels to Mandalore knowing he's walking into danger. The throne room becomes the stage for Maul's greatest act of cruelty. He forces Obi-Wan to watch as he ignites the Darksaber and prepares to kill Satine. The weapon that once brought peace to Mandalore will now murder its greatest advocate for pacifism. Maul draws out the moment, savoring Obi-Wan's anguish as much as his own anticipation. He explains how this death will balance the scales between them. Obi-Wan destroyed his life on Naboo, so now he'll destroy something precious to the Jedi Master. The Darksaber plunges into Satine's heart while Obi-Wan screams in helpless rage. She dies in the Jedi's arms, her last words a whisper about remembering her as she was, not as she dies. The murder achieves everything Maul wanted, breaking Obi-Wan's spirit while demonstrating his own power. But the victory comes with unexpected consequences. Maul expects Obi-Wan to fall to the dark side, to abandon Jedi teachings in favor of rage and revenge. Instead, the Jedi Master contains his grief and maintains his principles. The torture doesn't create the fallen enemy Maul hoped for. Frustrated by this failure, Maul has Obi-Wan thrown into prison rather than executing him immediately. He wants time to find new ways to break the Jedi's will, to prove that anyone can be corrupted, given sufficient pressure and pain. That decision gives Bo-Katan the opening she needs. The Night Owls have been organizing resistance activities since Maul's takeover, and now they have a chance to strike back meaningfully. Rescuing Obi-Wan becomes their first major operation against the new regime. The prison break succeeds despite heavy security around the facility. Bo-Katan's warriors know Mandalore's geography and infrastructure better than Maul's forces, giving them advantages that technology can't overcome. They extract Obi-Wan and escape the planet before Maul realizes what's happened. Bo-Katan's motivation goes beyond simple rebellion against tyranny. Satine was her sister, and watching her die at Maul's hands created a personal vendetta that will drive her actions for years to come. The Darksaber killed the person she loved most in the galaxy. The resistance movement that forms around Bo-Katan represents Mandalorians who reject Maul's rule regardless of ancient combat traditions. They believe their culture is more than just following whoever holds the Darksaber. True Mandalorian leadership requires understanding their values, sharing their heritage, caring about their future. Obi-Wan's escape serves Bo-Katan's larger strategy of exposing Maul's crimes to the galactic community. The Jedi Master carries news of what's happening on Mandalore to the Republic Senate, hoping external pressure might force regime change. But the galaxy is distracted by the Clone Wars, and few politicians want to get involved in Mandalorian internal affairs. The Republic has its own problems without taking on the challenge of deposing a Sith Lord who technically won power through legal means. Maul's rule grows more secure as time passes without external intervention. The Darksaber's legitimacy combines with fear of his power to create stability that serves his purposes. He may not have the love of his subjects, but he has their obedience, which is often enough for practical governance. The Shadow Collective's resources help Maul maintain control through both carrot and stick approaches. Criminal organizations provide enforcement when traditional government fails, while also offering economic opportunities that make cooperation profitable for key supporters. But success creates new problems for the self-proclaimed Mandalore. His growing power and influence attract attention from enemies who prefer him weak and scattered. Someone with the resources to destroy him personally has been watching his rise with growing concern. Darth Sidious doesn't tolerate competition, especially from former apprentices who've forgotten their place in the Sith hierarchy. Maul's conquest of Mandalore represents exactly the kind of independent power base that threatens his master's plans for galactic domination. The confrontation that's been building since Maul survived their last encounter is about to reach its climax. The Darksaber gave Maul the legitimacy to rule Mandalore, but it won't protect him from a Sith master who's been planning his moves for decades. Sidious is coming to Mandalore, and when he arrives, the planet will learn what real power looks like. The Darksaber may be the symbol of Mandalorian leadership, but some forces are too strong for any symbol to resist. When the most powerful Sith Lord in the galaxy decides to end your reign personally, no weapon in existence can save you. Maul is about to learn that some masters never truly let go of their apprentices. Darth Sidious arrives on Mandalore like a storm made of pure malice. The man who secretly controls the Republic as Chancellor Palpatine has decided that his former apprentice has become too dangerous to ignore. Maul's conquest of Mandalore and leadership of the Shadow Collective threatens plans that have been decades in the making. The confrontation happens in the same throne room where Maul executed Prey Vizsla and murdered Duchess Satine. But this time, Maul isn't the predator stalking helpless prey. He's facing someone who taught him everything he knows about the dark side and then abandoned him to die. Savage Opress stands beside his brother, ready to fight the most dangerous being either of them has ever encountered. The Night Brother, enhanced by dark magic, represents their only advantage in numbers. But numbers mean little when facing someone who's mastered powers they can barely comprehend. The duel begins with both brothers attacking Sidious simultaneously. Their coordination comes from years of fighting together, surviving encounters that would destroy lesser beings. Maul wields both the Darksaber and his crimson lightsaber, creating a whirlwind of dark and red energy that should overwhelm any single opponent. Sidious responds with the kind of power that legends are built around. His twin red lightsabers move faster than normal vision can follow, creating defensive patterns that turn aside every attack while positioning for devastating counterstrikes. The Sith Master fights like someone who's spent a lifetime perfecting the art of murder. The brothers discover quickly that they're not just facing superior skill. Sidious commands the dark side with an authority that makes their own abilities look like children playing with toys. His strength flows from decades of patient planning, careful manipulation, and absolute commitment to Sith philosophy. Savage falls first. The enhanced Night Brother's size and strength prove meaningless against someone who can redirect that power with casual force gestures. Sidious cuts him down without emotion or effort, treating the death like removing an annoying obstacle rather than killing a dangerous enemy. Maul's scream of rage echoes through the throne room as his brother dies before his eyes. The loss triggers fury that should make him more dangerous, but emotion without discipline only creates weaknesses for an experienced opponent to exploit. Fighting alone now, Maul reaches for every weapon at his disposal. The Darksaber flies back to his hand through the Force, while he maintains his grip on his personal lightsaber. Two blades against two blades, former apprentice against former master, in a duel that will determine Mandalore's future. The sight is something nobody has ever witnessed before. The legendary Darksaber crackling with dark energy in one hand, while a traditional Sith weapon burns crimson in the other. Maul attacks with everything he has learned about combat, channeling years of hatred and pain into strikes that should overwhelm any defense. But Sidious isn't just any opponent. He's the culmination of 1,000 years of Sith evolution, the final product of countless generations of dark side masters refining their techniques. His lightsaber work flows like water around stone, redirecting Maul's fury while creating openings for attacks that cut deeper than mere physical wounds. The Force, lightning that erupts from Sidious's fingertips, turns the throne room into an electrical storm. Purple energy arcs between the walls while Maul tries desperately to maintain his offensive. The Darksaber and his red blade spin in defensive patterns that barely keep the lightning from cooking him alive. Under that torrent of power, Maul's weapons become liabilities rather than assets. The effort required to deflect Force lightning leaves him vulnerable to lightsaber attacks. When he focuses on blade work, the electrical assault overwhelms his defenses. Sidious has created a tactical situation with no good solutions. The end comes with brutal efficiency. Sidious uses telekinesis to tear both weapons from Maul's grasp, sending the Darksaber and red lightsaber clattering across the throne room floor. Without his weapons, Maul becomes just another victim of superior power and planning. Force lightning pins Maul to the ground, while Sidious delivers a lecture about power and its proper use. The former apprentice writhed in agony as his master explains why this rebellion was doomed from the beginning. Maul thought he could build independent power, but true Sith understand that all power flows from a single source. The Darksaber lies forgotten on the floor, its dark blade extinguished and powerless. The weapon that gave Maul legitimacy to rule Mandalore has been casually discarded by someone who doesn't need symbols to command respect. Raw power speaks louder than any ancient tradition. Sidious could kill Maul easily, but death would waste a potentially useful tool. Instead, he speaks words that chill everyone who hears them. He has other uses for his former apprentice. Maul's suffering has only begun. The transfer to a separatist prison happens quickly and efficiently. Maul disappears into the Spire on Stygian Prime, a facility designed to hold the galaxy's most dangerous prisoners. His reign over Mandalore ends with no ceremony or formal abdication, just the absence of the man who claimed to rule them. The throne room stands empty, except for the Darksaber lying where Sidious cast it aside. The weapon waits for someone to claim it. But who would dare touch something that couldn't protect its wielder from the galaxy's ultimate predator? Mandalore faces an uncertain future without any clear leadership. Maul's government collapses with his capture, leaving a power vacuum that various factions will try to fill. The planet that has suffered through coup and counter-coup now faces the prospect of anarchy. Prime Minister Almec attempts to maintain some semblance of government, but his authority depended entirely on Maul's backing. Without the Sith Lord's protection, the corrupt politician becomes just another target for his many enemies. Bo-Katan and her resistance movement see opportunity in the chaos. They've been fighting Maul's rule since it began, and now they have a chance to reclaim their homeworld. But they face the same problem that has plagued Mandalore for generations. Who has the right to rule? The Darksaber could provide that legitimacy, but it sits abandoned in a throne room that nobody wants to enter. The weapon's recent history makes it seem cursed rather than blessed. Vizsla died wielding it. Maul conquered with it, but then lost everything to a more powerful enemy. The blade that once united Mandalore under Vizsla has become a symbol of failure and defeat. Every recent wielder has met a violent end or suffered humiliating loss. The weapon's reputation for bringing victory to worthy leaders lies in ruins alongside its latest master's ambitions. As news of Maul's defeat spreads across the galaxy, few people mourn his fall. He ruled through fear and brutality, showing no mercy to enemies or consideration for innocent civilians. His removal eliminates a source of instability that threatened multiple star systems, but his defeat also demonstrates the futility of opposing Darth Sidious directly. The Sith Master has proven that no amount of ancient weapons, criminal alliances, or personal hatred can challenge his supremacy. Those who seek power must find it through service to him or risk destruction. The Darksaber waits in the shadows of Mandalore's throne room, its next chapter unwritten. The weapon that has passed through so many hands and witnessed so much violence will soon face new trials and serve new masters. But for now, it rests in darkness, forgotten by a galaxy at war. Even the most secure prison in the galaxy can't hold someone when their former master wants them free. Maul's escape from the Spire is about to restart a war that will spread across multiple star systems. The rescue happens so smoothly it seems impossible. Gar Saxon and Rook Kast, two of Maul's most loyal Death Watch followers, somehow infiltrate a separatist maximum security facility and extract their leader without triggering major alarms. Either they're incredibly skilled or someone powerful is helping them succeed. Back on Mandalore, Prime Minister Almec proves his continued loyalty by retrieving the most important symbol of Maul's authority. The Darksaber has been sitting in the throne room since Sidious cast it aside, ignored by everyone who's afraid to touch something that couldn't protect its last wielder from the galaxy's most dangerous Sith Lord. Almec's agents brave the cursed weapon and deliver it to their escaped leader. The moment Maul's hand closes around the familiar hilt, his status as Mandalore is restored. The black blade ignites with the same dark energy that once terrorized his enemies, proving that some bonds between warrior and weapon go deeper than simple ownership. The Shadow Collective reforms around Maul's leadership like iron filings drawn to a magnet. Crime syndicates across the galaxy have been scattered and leaderless since his capture, but they rally quickly when their commander returns. The Hutts, Black Sun, and Pike Syndicate all recognize that their best chance for survival lies in unified resistance against common enemies. Maul's strategy reveals itself as the war escalates. He's not trying to conquer territory or build lasting power. He wants to draw Sidious into the open by creating enough chaos to force the Sith Master's personal attention. Every battle is bait designed to lure his former master into a trap. The assault on Zanbar becomes the first major engagement of this shadow war. General Grievous leads a massive droid army against Maul's forces, turning the planet into a battlefield where organic warriors face overwhelming mechanical opponents. The cyborg general's tactical brilliance creates problems that even the Shadow Collective's resources can't easily solve. Maul wields the Darksaber throughout the fighting, cutting through battle droids like they're made of tin. The ancient weapon's energy blade slices through mechanical components with the same ease it once showed against organic enemies. Each destroyed droid proves that some tools never become obsolete, but individual skill means little against industrial-scale warfare. The Separatists deploy droids by the thousands, replacing losses faster than Maul's warriors can create them. The Shadow Collective fights with courage and determination, but they're eventually forced to retreat in the face of superior numbers. The withdrawal to Ord Mantell gives Maul a chance to strike back more cleverly. Instead of fighting another pitched battle against impossible odds, he uses deception and surprise to board Grievous's command ship. The Darksaber becomes a tool of intimidation as much as combat, its dark reputation preceding its wielder into enemy territory. Count Dooku's capture represents the kind of prize that can change the entire conflict. The Separatist leader commands armies and resources that dwarf anything the Shadow Collective has assembled. More importantly, he's valuable enough to Sidious that his capture might finally draw the Sith Master into the open. The Darksaber at Dooku's throat creates a moment of perfect irony. The weapon forged by a Jedi threatens a former Jedi who's fallen to the dark side. The blade that once brought peace to Mandalore now serves as an instrument of terror against someone who helped destroy galactic peace. But the Republic interferes before Maul can complete his plans. Jedi forces led by Obi-Wan Kenobi and Mace Windu assault Vizsla Keep 09. forcing unlikely alliances between enemies who hate each other slightly less than they hate their immediate threats. The sight of Maul and Dooku fighting side by side against Republic forces creates one of the war's strangest moments. Two dark side users who've spent years as enemies suddenly coordinate their attacks against Jedi who represent everything they oppose. The Darksaber and Dooku's curved lightsaber work in harmony despite their wielders' mutual distrust. Mace Windu faces the Darksaber in combat for the first time, testing his legendary skills against a weapon that's killed multiple Jedi over the centuries. The purple blade of his lightsaber clashes against the flat black energy of Maul's ancient weapon, while Aayla Secura engages other threats nearby. The duel showcases everything that makes the Darksaber dangerous in skilled hands. Its unusual design and shorter length create timing problems for opponents used to fighting conventional lightsabers. Maul's aggressive style combines with the weapon's unique properties to keep even a Jedi Master constantly defending. But the battle serves larger strategic purposes beyond individual victories. Maul uses the chaos to escape with his prisoner, while demonstrating that the Shadow Collective can hold its own against Republic forces. The engagement proves his organization remains a serious threat despite recent setbacks. Dathomir becomes the final battlefield as all the war's participants converge on the dark world where Maul's story began. Mother Talzin's spiritual presence adds supernatural elements to what's already become a complex multi-faction conflict involving Sith, Jedi, droids, and crime syndicates. The ritual that manifests Talzin through Dooku's body creates temporary hope that Maul might finally have the power to defeat Sidious. Mother and son working together represent a combination of dark side abilities that could theoretically challenge even the galaxy's most powerful Sith Lord. But Sidious and Grievous arrive with enough firepower to destroy the entire Nightbrother village. The battle that follows encompasses lightsaber duels, force powers, droid armies, and Night Sister magic in a climactic engagement that determines multiple fates simultaneously. Maul fights both Sidious and Grievous with the Darksaber blazing in his hand. But he's facing opponents who've prepared for this confrontation. The cyborg general's tactical modifications and the Sith Master's overwhelming power create insurmountable obstacles for even the most determined resistance. Talzin's sacrifice saves Maul's life, but costs the Shadow Collective its supernatural patron. The Night Sister's death at Grievous's hands ends any hope that dark magic might provide solutions to problems that conventional warfare can't solve. Maul's escape from Dathomir marks the end of his organized resistance against Sidious. The Shadow Collective collapses without its leadership, scattering across the galaxy as individual criminal organizations focus on survival rather than revenge. The war that began with such ambitious goals ends in complete defeat. The Darksaber remains on Dathomir when Maul flees his homeworld for the last time. Hidden somewhere in the ruins of the Night Sister lair, the ancient weapon waits for new hands to claim it. The blade that served Maul through his rise and fall now faces an uncertain future on a world haunted by death and dark magic. As the Clone Wars end and the Empire rises from the Republic's ashes, the Darksaber's location becomes one of the galaxy's forgotten secrets. The weapon that once commanded respect and fear from its enemies now gathers dust in the shadows, its legend growing cold while new powers reshape civilization around it. For years, the galaxy's most legendary weapon sits forgotten in a cave filled with the bones of witches and the ghosts of the past. But some artifacts are too powerful to stay hidden forever. The Empire rules the galaxy now, crushing rebellions and hunting down the last Jedi while building weapons that can destroy entire planets. On the dark world of Dathomir, Maul has survived the transition from Republic to Empire by staying in the shadows and pursuing personal vendettas that matter more to him than galactic politics. The former Sith Lord no longer carries the Darksaber into battle. His obsession has shifted to finding Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Jedi Master who cut him in half so many years ago. The black blade that once symbolized his claim to rule Mandalore now gathers dust among other relics from his violent past. The Night Sister lair where Maul hides his treasures has become a tomb filled with artifacts that tell the story of galactic conflict. Ancient Sith holocrons sit beside Mandalorian weapons while the Darksaber rests among them like just another piece of forgotten history. The weapon that shaped the destiny of entire worlds waits in darkness for someone to discover its power. That someone turns out to be a teenage Jedi named Ezra Bridger, though he arrives on Dathomir for completely different reasons. Maul has been manipulating events to lure the young rebel to this haunted world, hoping to trade knowledge that will help him locate his greatest enemy. The ritual they perform in the ancient cave goes wrong in ways that nobody expects. Ezra wants to learn how to defeat the Sith, while Maul seeks the location of his nemesis. But their communion with Night Sister magic awakens something that should have stayed sleeping forever. Vengeful spirits rise from the bones, scattered throughout the lair, angry at being disturbed after years of peaceful death. These aren't ordinary ghosts, but the essence of witches who commanded dark power when they lived. Their hatred for the living burns with intensity that makes the cave itself feel like a furnace. The spirits target the weakest minds they can find for possession. Sabine Wren and Kanan Jarrus suddenly turn against their friend Ezra, their eyes glowing with supernatural malice, while their bodies move with inhuman coordination. The rebels who came to Dathomir together now find themselves fighting for their lives against each other. In the chaos of supernatural possession and desperate combat, Ezra spots something that catches his attention despite the immediate danger. The Darksaber lies among Maul's collection of artifacts, its distinctive shape marking it as obviously different from the other weapons scattered around the cave. Ezra recognizes the object as a lightsaber even though he's never seen one like it before. The flat black blade and shorter length mark it as unique, but the basic design principles are familiar to anyone trained in Jedi traditions. This is clearly a weapon made by someone who understood the Force. The possessed Sabine moves toward the ancient weapon with predatory grace. Her Mandalorian heritage draws her to the blade even while evil spirits control her actions. When her hand closes around the hilt and the Darksaber ignites for the first time in years, the cave fills with crackling dark energy. The duel that follows showcases everything that makes the Darksaber dangerous in combat. Sabine's Mandalorian training combines with the Spirit's supernatural guidance to create attack patterns that push Ezra to his limits. The black blade moves with deadly precision, while her fighting style adapts constantly to exploit his weaknesses. Ezra defends himself with his green lightsaber, but he's fighting multiple enemies at once. The possessed Sabine attacks from one direction, while supernatural forces assault him from others. The spirits use their victims as weapons, while also manipulating the environment to create additional threats. Desperation forces Ezra to make a choice that would horrify his Jedi teachers. He grabs the Darksaber with his free hand, dual-wielding ancient Mandalorian and modern Jedi weapons simultaneously. The combination feels wrong in ways he can't articulate, but survival matters more than proper technique. Fighting with both lightsabers gives Ezra the tools he needs to break the spiritual possession. He strikes the altar that anchors the vengeful ghosts to the physical world, using precise cuts from both blades to destroy the focus of their power. The combined energy of Jedi and Mandalorian weapons proves more effective than either could manage alone. The destruction of the altar banishes the spirits back to whatever realm they came from. Sabine and Kanan collapse as the supernatural influence leaves their bodies, exhausted but finally free from possession. The immediate danger has passed, but the consequences of their actions are just beginning. Maul flees Dathomir during the chaos, abandoning his collection of artifacts rather than risk capture by Imperial forces or vengeful spirits. The former Sith Lord has learned what he came to discover and no longer needs this haunted base of operations. The rebels prepare to leave as well, eager to escape a world that's proven too dangerous for their mission. But Sabine notices the Darksaber lying where the spirits dropped it after their banishment. The weapon calls to something deep in her Mandalorian heritage. She picks up the ancient blade without fully understanding what she's claiming. The Darksaber feels right in her hands despite its dark history and supernatural associations. As a member of House Wren and descendant of Clan Vizsla, Sabine has a genetic connection to the weapon that goes back generations. The rebels escape Dathomir with their new prize, unaware that they've begun a chain of events that will reshape Mandalorian politics for years to come. The Darksaber has found new purpose in the hands of someone who can bridge the gap between its ancient heritage and the modern rebellion against Imperial tyranny. Back at their base on Atolon, Sabine faces a decision she's unprepared to make. The Darksaber represents power and responsibility that she's never wanted or sought. Rather than keep the weapon, she gives it to Kanan Jarrus for safekeeping while she figures out what it means for her future. The Jedi Knight accepts the blade reluctantly, understanding that he's now guardian of something far more significant than a simple weapon. The Darksaber carries the weight of Mandalorian history and the potential to unite or divide an entire warrior culture. For the first time in years, the legendary weapon rests in rebel hands rather than those of criminals or Sith Lords. The change represents hope that ancient symbols of power might serve causes of freedom instead of tyranny. But hope comes with risks that nobody fully understands yet. The Darksaber's journey is far from over. Hidden among the rebels of Phoenix Squadron, the blade waits for its true destiny to unfold. Sabine Wren may not realize it yet, but she's inherited more than just a weapon. She's claimed the key to Mandalore's future and her own. Sometimes the greatest warriors are the ones who doubt themselves the most. Sabine Wren is about to discover that carrying an ancient weapon means confronting ancient pain. The Darksaber sits in Kanan's quarters like an accusation. Sabine brought it back from Dathomir, but she wants nothing to do with the weapon now. Every time she looks at the black hilt, she feels the weight of expectations she's not ready to meet. So she leaves it with the Jedi Knight and tries to pretend it doesn't exist. But some responsibilities can't be ignored forever. Fen Rao, the former Mandalorian protector who's joined the rebel cause, recognizes what the Darksaber represents better than anyone. He's old enough to remember stories about Tar Vizsla, wise enough to understand what the weapon could mean for his people's future. The history lesson happens around a campfire on Atolon, with Sabine listening reluctantly while Fen explains her heritage. House Wren belongs to Clan Vizsla, making her a direct descendant of the man who forged the Darksaber. The weapon didn't end up in her hands by accident. Blood calls to blood across the generations. Kanan and Fen paint a picture that terrifies and inspires Sabine in equal measure. The Empire has scattered Mandalorian clans across the galaxy, turning proud warriors into refugees and mercenaries. But the right symbol wielded by the right person could unite them again. The Darksaber in the hands of a true Vizsla descendant might rally their people to the rebel cause. The idea sounds impossible to someone who's been running from her past for years. Sabine left Mandalore as a teenage cadet who'd betrayed her own people by designing a weapon used against them. How can someone with that history expect to lead anyone, let alone unite warring clans around an ancient symbol? But her people's suffering under Imperial rule weighs heavily on her conscience. Reports filter back to the rebel base about Mandalorian worlds stripped of resources, families torn apart by conscription and forced labor. The Empire treats her culture like a threat to be eliminated rather than a heritage to be preserved. The training begins with basics that feel like insults to someone who's been fighting since childhood. Wooden practice swords and footwork drills seem pointless to a warrior who survived real combat against Imperial forces. But Kanan insists that lightsaber fighting requires different skills than blaster combat or explosive ordnance. Days pass with Sabine learning forms and techniques that make her body ache in new ways. The Jedi approach to combat emphasizes patience and precision over the aggressive tactics she's used to. Every movement must flow into the next, creating patterns that build momentum instead of burning energy. When Kanan finally allows her to train with the actual Darksaber, the experience proves worse than she expected. The weapon feels impossibly heavy in her hands, fighting her attempts to control its movements. What should be graceful becomes clumsy. What should be fluid becomes forced. Kanan explains that the Darksaber responds to its wielder's emotional state more than most weapons. Inner turmoil makes the blade harder to control, while mental clarity allows it to flow like water. Sabine's guilt and self-doubt are literally weighing down the ancient weapon. The breakthrough comes during a particularly intense sparring session. Kanan pushes Sabine harder than usual, forcing her to confront the pain she's been carrying since leaving Mandalore. Under pressure, the emotional walls she's built start crumbling. The confession pours out of her like poison from an infected wound. She tells Kanan about her time as an Imperial cadet, the weapon she helped design, the way it was used against her own people. The Duchess device targeted Mandalorian armor specifically, turning their greatest protection into a death trap. Her family disowned her when they learned what she'd done. The Empire she served betrayed her trust by using her work for genocide. Every Mandalorian who died wearing Beskar armor died partially because of her contributions to Imperial technology. The guilt has been eating her alive for years, making her feel unworthy of her heritage and terrified of taking responsibility for her people's future. How can someone who helped the Empire hurt Mandalorians expect to unite them against their oppressors? But speaking the truth aloud starts a healing process that Sabine didn't know she needed. Kanan listens without judgment, helping her understand that past mistakes don't define future possibilities. Everyone who fights the Empire carries regrets about things they've done or failed to do. The emotional catharsis translates into physical improvement almost immediately. As Sabine stops fighting her own guilt, the Darksaber stops fighting her attempts to wield it. The weapon becomes lighter, more responsive, more willing to follow her lead in combat. Kanan teaches her to respect the blade rather than fear it. The Darksaber isn't a burden to be carried, but a tool to be mastered. Ancient Mandalorian fighting techniques start flowing naturally from her movements as muscle memory awakens skills she inherited but never developed. The integration of lightsaber forms with Mandalorian combat doctrine creates something unique and deadly. Sabine learns to use the Darksaber's flat blade and shorter length as advantages rather than limitations. Her fighting style becomes distinctly her own while honoring both traditions that shaped the weapon. By the end of her training, Sabine has transformed from someone running from responsibility into someone ready to embrace it. She accepts that she's worthy of carrying Vizsla's legacy despite her past mistakes. The weapon that once felt like a curse now feels like a tool for redemption. The decision to use the Darksaber to help liberate Mandalore comes naturally once Sabine stops fighting her destiny. She can't change what she did as an Imperial cadet, but she can use what she learned to hurt the Empire that betrayed her trust. Kanan watches his student prepare for her first real mission, carrying the ancient weapon. The frightened girl who refused to touch the Darksaber has become a confident warrior ready to challenge an empire. The transformation proves that some legacies are worth the pain required to claim them. The training ground on Attalon has become a place of healing as much as learning. Sabine faced her darkest memories and emerged stronger for the experience. The Darksaber glows with steady energy in her hands, no longer heavy with doubt, but light with purpose. The next phase of the weapon's journey will take it back to Mandalorian space, where ancient symbols will face modern challenges. But for the first time in years, the Darksaber serves someone who understands both its power and its responsibility. Sabine Wren has become worthy of Vizsla's legacy. Coming home with a legendary weapon should feel like triumph. For Sabine Wren, it feels more like walking into a trap that her own mother helped set. Crownest stretches out in endless fields of ice and snow, a world where Clan Wren has lived for generations. Their stronghold rises from the frozen landscape like a monument to Mandalorian endurance, built to withstand both natural storms and enemy attacks. This should be a place of safety and welcome for a daughter returning after years of exile. But the Empire has changed everything. Even family loyalty becomes complicated when survival depends on making deals with oppressors who hold the power of life and death over entire clans. Sabine arrives at her childhood home carrying the Darksaber openly, flanked by Kanan and Ezra as witnesses to her new status. The weapon's presence should announce her transformation from rebel outcast to potential leader of Mandalorian resistance. Instead, it creates problems nobody anticipated. Countess Ursa Wren stares at her daughter holding the legendary blade with a mixture of shock and terror. She recognizes the weapon from stories passed down through generations of House Vizsla, but she also recognizes the danger that possessing it will bring to her family and clan. The technical challenge to Sabine's claim comes immediately. Ursa points out the uncomfortable truth that Sabine found the Darksaber rather than winning it in combat. According to Mandalorian tradition, that leaves her ownership open to challenge by anyone willing to fight for the weapon. More dangerous than legal technicalities is the political reality of imperial occupation. The Empire doesn't tolerate symbols of Mandalorian independence, and the Darksaber represents the ultimate challenge to their authority. Possessing the weapon makes Clan Wren a target for retribution that could destroy everyone Sabine loves. Ursa makes a decision that breaks her daughter's heart, but might save her family's lives. She secretly contacts Gar Saxon, the Imperial Viceroy who rules Mandalore on behalf of the Emperor. The deal she proposes is simple. Trade the Darksaber and the Jedi, accompanying Sabine, for amnesty that protects Clan Wren from Imperial punishment. Gar Saxon accepts the offer with enthusiasm that should have warned Ursa about his true intentions. The former Death Watch warrior who once served Maul understands the Darksaber's value better than most. He's been waiting for a chance to claim the weapon that legitimizes Mandalorian leadership. The betrayal happens the moment Saxon gets his hands on the ancient blade. He ignites the Darksaber with obvious satisfaction while ordering his Imperial supercommandos to slaughter Clan Wren as traitors to the Empire. The amnesty he promised turns out to be worthless the instant he no longer needs Ursa's cooperation. The stronghold becomes a battlefield as Clan Wren warriors fight for their lives against Imperial forces who've come to commit genocide. Blaster fire echoes through halls where children once played, while the smell of smoke and death fills air that should carry the sounds of family gatherings. Saxon's attempt to execute Ursa from behind with the Darksaber reveals everything about his character. He's willing to murder an unarmed woman who trusted him while her back is turned. The cowardice disgusts even his own troops, though none of them dare object to their commander's methods. Sabine's intervention saves her mother's life and changes the course of Mandalorian history. She grabs Ezra's lightsaber and blocks Saxon's strike just in time, proving that her Jedi training has prepared her for moments when quick thinking matters more than careful planning. The challenge she issues to Saxon follows Mandalorian law exactly. Single combat for possession of the Darksaber, with the winner taking both the weapon and authority over the losers. Saxon can't refuse without losing face in front of his own warriors and the Clan Wren fighters he's trying to intimidate. The duel moves outside onto Crownest's frozen plains, where ancient traditions play out against a backdrop of endless ice and snow. The setting feels appropriate for a fight that will determine whether Mandalorian customs survive Imperial occupation or die with the last free clans. Saxon fights with the advantages of age, experience, and superior physical strength. He's been wielding weapons since before Sabine was born, participating in battles that taught him how to kill efficiently and without mercy. The Darksaber responds to his aggressive style with crackling energy that illuminates the snowy battlefield. But Sabine has advantages that Saxon doesn't recognize until too late. Her Jedi training taught her to read opponents through the Force, anticipating attacks before they develop fully. Her artistic background gave her spatial awareness that helps her position herself for maximum tactical advantage. Most importantly, she's fighting for something Saxon can't understand. He wants power for its own sake, while she fights to protect people she loves. The difference shows in every exchange as Sabine's determination gradually overwhelms Saxon's technical skill. The disarming move that ends the fight comes from pure Mandalorian combat doctrine, enhanced by Jedi techniques. Sabine uses Saxon's own strength against him, redirecting his attack into an opening that leaves him vulnerable to counterattack. Ezra's lightsaber cuts through his defenses while his own momentum carries him past any chance of recovery. The moment when Sabine holds both lightsabers at Saxon's throat creates perfect symmetry. The green blade of Jedi tradition crosses with the black energy of Mandalorian heritage, representing the dual nature of her training and identity. She's become something new that honors both traditions. Saxon's refusal to yield proves he understands nothing about honor or survival. Drawing a blaster on someone who's clearly defeated him violates every code that Mandalorians respect. The treachery costs him his life when Ursa shoots him dead rather than watch her daughter die from betrayal. The victory establishes Sabine's claim to the Darksaber beyond any possible challenge. She won the weapon in fair combat according to ancient law, witnessed by warriors from multiple factions. More importantly, she proved her worthiness through courage and skill that impressed even former enemies. The decision to stay on Mandalore rather than return to the rebel fleet marks Sabine's acceptance of her destiny as a leader. She's found her true calling in uniting the scattered clans against Imperial oppression. The Darksaber gives her the authority to rally Mandalorian resistance, while her training provides the skills to lead them effectively. Clan Wren's stronghold becomes the center of growing rebellion as news of Saxon's defeat spreads across Mandalorian space. Warriors who've been hiding their heritage or serving the Empire reluctantly start remembering what it means to be Mandalorian. The ancient blade has found a worthy wielder who can inspire others to reclaim their identity. The girl who left Mandalore as a guilty exile has returned as a confident leader carrying the symbol of her people's greatest traditions. The Darksaber's long journey through violence and betrayal has finally brought it to someone who can restore its original purpose of uniting rather than dividing. Sometimes the best leaders are the ones who run away from power until the right moment forces them to embrace it. Bo-Katan is about to discover that destiny doesn't always wait for you to feel ready. Sabine Wren has been building a rebellion across Mandalorian space, using the Darksaber to rally scattered clans against Imperial occupation. Her first major operation targets something deeply personal. The Empire has captured her father, Ulrich Wren, and she's going to get him back no matter what it takes. The rescue mission brings her to Mandalore itself, where Imperial forces have turned her homeworld into a prison. The planet that once bred the galaxy's greatest warriors now serves as a cautionary tale about what happens to cultures that resist Imperial authority. But some traditions are too strong to die easily. The Darksaber cuts through Imperial forces like they're made of paper during the assault on the prison facility. Sabine has mastered the ancient weapon well enough to use it against modern enemies, proving that old tools can still solve new problems. The Black Blade that once united Mandalorian clans now liberates Mandalorian prisoners. During the fighting, Sabine encounters someone she's only heard about in stories. Bo-Katan emerges from the shadows of Mandalorian resistance like a ghost from the past, still fighting the Empire despite years of defeat and exile. The sister of the murdered Duchess Satine has never stopped believing that Mandalore can be free. Their meeting creates an immediate recognition of shared purpose. Both women understand what it means to carry the weight of Mandalorian heritage while fighting against impossible odds. Both have lost family to the Empire's cruelty and the Sith Lord who served as its tool. But Bo-Katan carries burdens that Sabine can barely imagine. She remembers when Mandalore was truly united under her sister's leadership. She watched Maul murder Satine with the same weapon that Sabine now carries. The Darksaber represents both hope and horror in ways that few people can understand. Sabine's immediate offer to give Bo-Katan the Darksaber shocks everyone present. She recognizes that leadership requires more than just carrying an ancient weapon. Bo-Katan has the experience, wisdom, and family connections needed to unite Mandalorian clans in ways that a young rebel never could. Bo-Katan's refusal comes from humility that runs deeper than false modesty. She's failed before as a leader, making choices that led to disaster for her people and death for her sister. The thought of accepting responsibility again terrifies her more than any Imperial weapon or Sith Lord. The technical argument about legitimacy provides cover for deeper fears. Bo-Katan didn't win the Darksaber in combat from its previous owner. According to Mandalorian tradition, that leaves her claim open to challenge. But the real issue is whether she can trust herself with power after her previous failures. Instead of accepting leadership, Bo-Katan joins Sabine's mission to destroy the Empire's most horrible weapon. The Duchess device represents everything evil about Imperial occupation, using Mandalorian cultural symbols against the people who created them. The weapon that should protect warriors instead becomes their death sentence. The irony cuts deep because Sabine helped design the original technology as an Imperial cadet. Her guilt over creating something used to murder her own people drives her determination to destroy every trace of the weapon. The Darksaber becomes her tool of redemption as much as Bo-Katan's symbol of resistance. Tiber Saxon's Star Destroyer becomes the target for their most daring raid. The brother of the man Sabine killed in combat has inherited both his siblings' hatred and his access to Imperial resources. The massive warship bristles with defenses designed to make any assault suicidal. But Mandalorian warriors don't calculate odds when their people's survival is at stake. Sabine and Bo-Katan fight their way through the ship's corridors side by side, their partnership representing the bridge between old and new leadership styles. The Darksaber blazes in Sabine's hands, while Bo-Katan's tactical brilliance guides their assault. The destruction of the Duchess device requires someone to get inside the weapon's core and sabotage it from within. Sabine volunteers for what amounts to a suicide mission, using the Darksaber to cut through the device's shielding while its energy builds toward catastrophic release. The explosion that follows can be seen from orbit, a fireball that consumes an entire Star Destroyer and everyone aboard it. Tiber Saxon dies along with his weapon, eliminating both the Empire's deadliest anti-Mandalorian technology and one of its most ruthless commanders. The victory creates a moment of unity that hasn't existed on Mandalore for years. Representatives from multiple clans gather to witness what could be the beginning of true resistance against Imperial occupation. For the first time since the Empire rose to power, Mandalorians have hope that they might actually win. Sabine uses this moment to make her final offer of the Darksaber to Bo-Katan. But this time, the context is different. She's not giving away a burden she doesn't want to carry. She's recognizing that some people are meant for leadership, while others are meant to serve the cause in different ways. The explanation about fate and the Force resonates with warriors who understand that some things happen for reasons beyond simple chance. Sabine found the Darksaber on Dathomir, trained with it on Atolon, and used it to defeat Imperial enemies. But all of that was preparation for this moment when she could give it to someone truly worthy. Bo-Katan's acceptance of the weapon comes with visible emotion that she rarely allows herself to show. The memory of her sister Satine, murdered by a Sith Lord wielding this same blade, gives weight to the moment that goes beyond politics or tradition. She's reclaiming something that was taken from her family. The ignition of the Darksaber in Bo-Katan's hands creates a moment of perfect symbolism. The black blade that has passed through so many violent transfers finally rests with someone who can use it to build rather than destroy. The weapon that divided Mandalorians under Maul's rule will now unite them under legitimate leadership. The Mandalorians who bow to acknowledge Bo-Katan as Mandalore represent clans that have been scattered and broken by Imperial occupation. Their unity around the Darksaber proves that some symbols have power that transcends political circumstances. Ancient traditions can still provide foundation for modern resistance. Bo-Katan stands with the Darksaber held high, accepting a destiny she's tried to avoid for years. The weapon that killed her sister will now serve her efforts to avenge that murder and free their people. The circle is closing in ways that feel like justice finally catching up with injustice. The Mandalorian resistance has found its leader, and the Darksaber has found its purpose. Under Bo-Katan's guidance, the scattered clans will become an army capable of challenging Imperial occupation. The weapon forged by Vizsla to unite his people will once again serve that ancient purpose. Sometimes hope becomes the cruelest weapon of all. Bo-Katan is about to learn that trusting your enemies to show mercy can cost more than fighting them to the death. The Empire has been watching Mandalore's growing resistance with increasing concern. Bo-Katan's leadership has united scattered clans in ways that threaten Imperial control across multiple star systems. The Darksaber has become a symbol that inspires rebellion far beyond Mandalorian space. Emperor Palpatine decides that symbols and their people must be eliminated permanently. The directive comes from the highest levels of Imperial command, carrying the authority of someone who's spent decades perfecting the art of genocide. Mandalore will serve as an example of what happens to cultures that resist Imperial authority. The Night of 1,000 Tears begins without warning. Imperial fleets drop out of hyperspace above Mandalore and immediately open fire on civilian targets. There are no demands for surrender, no offers of negotiation. Just fusion bombs falling like rain while turbo-laser batteries turn cities into craters. The name comes from the tears that fall when an entire civilization burns. Mandalorian mothers watch their children die in fires hot enough to melt Beskar armor. Warriors who've survived countless battles are cut down by weapons designed to exterminate populations rather than defeat armies. Sundari, the beautiful capital that Duchess Satine built as a monument to peace and prosperity, disappears in a series of explosions that can be seen from orbit. The crystal spires that once reached toward the sky become fragments scattered across a landscape transformed into a wasteland. Bo-Katan and her resistance forces try to mount a defense, but they're fighting a war machine that's been preparing for this moment for months. Imperial purge troopers sweep through settlements while droid armies secure territory that their fleet has already sterilized. The coordination is perfect, the brutality absolute. The Darksaber blazes in Bo-Katan's hand as she leads desperate counterattacks against impossible odds. The ancient weapon cuts through Imperial forces with the same effectiveness it's always shown, but individual skill means nothing against industrial-scale slaughter. For every enemy she kills, 100 more appear to take their place. The realization that her people are facing extinction forces Bo-Katan to consider options that violate everything she believes about leadership and honor. Surrender has never been part of Mandalorian vocabulary, but watching genocide unfold around her changes the meaning of courage and cowardice. Moff Gideon's offer comes through official Imperial channels, delivered with the cold professionalism of someone who's negotiated the terms of cultural extinction before. The Empire will spare surviving Mandalorians if their leader surrenders the symbol of their resistance and acknowledges Imperial authority. The choice tears Bo-Katan apart on levels that go beyond simple military tactics. Giving up the Darksaber means betraying everything the weapon represents. But keeping it means watching the last of her people die for a symbol that can't protect them from orbital bombardment. The formal parley happens in a bombed-out settlement where the dead outnumber the living by thousands to one. Gideon arrives with an escort of stormtroopers while Bo-Katan brings the few night owls who've survived the initial assault. The contrast between Imperial strength and Mandalorian desperation couldn't be more obvious. Handing over the Darksaber feels like cutting out her own heart. Bo-Katan places the weapon in Gideon's hands while her people watch their greatest symbol pass to an enemy who'll use it to mock everything they've fought to preserve. The moment represents the death of Mandalorian independence more clearly than any military defeat. Gideon's betrayal comes immediately. The moment his fingers close around the Darksaber's hilt, he signals for the bombardment to resume. Imperial ships that had been holding their fire open up with renewed fury, turning the brief ceasefire into a setup for more efficient slaughter. The bombs that fall while Bo-Katan watches in horror prove that Imperial mercy is a lie designed to extract maximum psychological damage. Her surrender accomplished nothing except giving their enemies the satisfaction of destroying hope before destroying lives. The deal was never real, just another weapon in the Empire's arsenal of cruelty. Mandalore dies over the course of days as Imperial forces systematically eliminate every trace of civilization they can find. Cities that took centuries to build disappear in hours. Artworks that preserved cultural memory for generations become ash that blows away on radioactive winds. The few Mandalorians who survive do so by abandoning everything that made them Mandalorian. They scatter across the galaxy as refugees, hiding their heritage and forgetting their language to avoid Imperial detection. The culture that produced some of history's greatest warriors becomes a secret that parents whisper to children in the dark. Bo-Katan's survival carries a burden heavier than death. She lives while her people die, leads while her world burns, carries responsibility for decisions that saved no one and cost everything. The shame of surrendering the Darksaber combines with grief over the genocide to create pain that will never fully heal. The propaganda that follows the purge twists the knife deeper into Mandalorian survivors. Imperial broadcasts blame Bo-Katan for Mandalore's destruction, claiming that her unearned possession of the Darksaber brought a curse upon her people. The ancient weapon's failure to protect them becomes evidence of divine justice rather than military superiority. The superstition spreads among Mandalorian survivors who need someone to blame for their suffering. Bo-Katan accepted the Darksaber as a gift rather than winning it in combat, violating traditions that supposedly protect the weapon's power. Her illegitimate claim brought disaster upon everyone she tried to protect. Moff Gideon keeps the Darksaber as more than just a trophy. The weapon represents his personal victory over an entire civilization, proof that Imperial power can break any symbol and destroy any culture. He wears it openly as a reminder of what happens to those who resist the Empire's will. The few night owls who survive the purge form a resistance cell around Bo-Katan. But their numbers are too small and their resources too limited to threaten Imperial control. They become ghosts haunting the ruins of their homeworld, keeping alive traditions that most of the galaxy thinks are extinct. Bo-Katan's determination to reclaim the Darksaber and restore Mandalore becomes the driving force of her existence. She spends years hunting Gideon across the galaxy, following rumors and Imperial transmissions while building contacts within the growing rebellion against Imperial rule. The weapon that once united Mandalorian clans under noble leadership now serves as a constant reminder of their greatest failure. Every day it remains in Imperial hands represents another day of exile for the survivors and another victory for the forces that destroyed their world. The Great Purge marks the darkest chapter in the Darksaber's long history. The blade forged to bring peace to Mandalore has become the symbol of its destruction. The weapon that should have protected its people instead hangs at the belt of their greatest enemy, a trophy of successful genocide. The Empire is dead, but some of its servants refuse to accept defeat. Moff Gideon is about to prove that the Darksaber can corrupt anyone who wields it for the wrong reasons. The Battle of Endor changes everything. Emperor Palpatine dies aboard the second Death Star, while rebel fleets destroy the Empire's most powerful weapon. News of Imperial defeat spreads across the galaxy like wildfire, triggering celebrations on worlds that have suffered under tyranny for decades. But the Empire doesn't collapse overnight. Military commanders and regional governors try to hold on to pieces of the old regime, carving out personal kingdoms from the ruins of galactic government. Some fight for ideology, others for power, most for simple survival in a galaxy that suddenly has no use for Imperial officers. Moff Gideon proves more adaptable than most Imperial remnant leaders. Where others cling to the past or flee into hiding, he builds something new from the wreckage of the old order. His base on Navarro becomes the center of operations that span multiple star systems. The Darksaber gives Gideon advantages that other warlords lack. The weapon represents legitimate authority over Mandalorian space, at least in the minds of people who respect ancient traditions. Imperial propaganda has convinced many that Gideon won the blade fairly from Bo-Katan during the Purge. Years pass with Gideon using the Darksaber to intimidate enemies and reward followers. The black blade becomes his personal symbol, marking him as someone who conquered the unconquerable Mandalorians. Imperial officers serve him because he represents strength, while local populations obey because they fear what happens to those who resist. The weapon's public revelation happens by accident during a mission that goes wrong on Navarro. Gideon's Outland TIE fighter gets shot down during what should have been a routine operation, crashing in the middle of a town where his enemies can see everything that happens next. Trapped inside a burning wreck that should become his tomb, Gideon does something that shocks everyone watching. The Darksaber ignites inside the crashed fighter, its black blade cutting through twisted metal like it's made of cloth. Sparks fly as he carves an escape route from wreckage that no normal person could survive. The sight of an Imperial Moff wielding the legendary Mandalorian weapon sends ripples of shock through the crowd of onlookers. Some recognize the blade from stories passed down through generations. Others understand its significance from recent history. All of them realize they're witnessing something that changes the balance of power in their region of space. News of Gideon's possession spreads quickly through networks of smugglers, rebels, and Imperial sympathizers. The Darksaber hasn't been seen in public since the Great Purge, and its reappearance raises questions about who has the right to carry it and what they plan to do with that authority. Bo-Katan gets confirmation of what she's suspected for years. The weapon she surrendered to save her people now serves the man who orchestrated their genocide. Every day it remains in his hands represents another victory for the forces that destroyed Mandalore. Her hunt for Gideon intensifies after the Navarro incident. Leading a small team of night owls including Axe Woves and Koska Reeves, Bo-Katan attacks Imperial targets across multiple systems. Each raid aims to gather intelligence about Gideon's location and strength. The boarding of an Imperial weapons transport reveals how deeply Gideon's possession of the Darksaber affects Imperial morale. When Bo-Katan demands information about the weapon's location, the ship's captain chooses suicide over betraying his commander. The electroshock that kills him proves Gideon inspires loyalty through fear rather than respect. But the captain's death also confirms that Gideon still carries the Darksaber and considers it important enough to kill for. Bo-Katan's mission becomes more urgent as she realizes that every day of delay allows her enemy to strengthen his position and legitimacy. Gideon's capture of Grogu represents his most audacious scheme yet. The Force-sensitive child draws attention from djarin, a Mandalorian bounty hunter who's crossed them off before. The confrontation creates opportunities for Gideon to demonstrate his power and cruelty. The scene with Grogu and the Darksaber showcases Gideon's understanding of psychological warfare. He ignites the weapon in front of a child who's probably seen similar blades during his time at the Jedi Temple. The display is designed to create fear and establish dominance over someone who represents hope for the future. When Grogu reaches toward the fascinating energy blade, Gideon pulls it away with calculated cruelty. "The child isn't ready for such a weapon," he explains, though his real message is about power and who deserves to wield it. The moment reveals everything about Gideon's character and his relationship with the Darksaber. To Gideon, the weapon represents more than just a symbol or tool. It's proof that he's conquered something unconquerable, broken something unbreakable. The blade that once united Mandalorian clans now serves as his personal trophy of successful genocide. His claim to rule Mandalorians through possession of their greatest symbol would be laughable if it weren't backed by military force and Imperial technology. But legitimacy often matters less than raw power when determining who controls territory and resources. The New Republic's weakness allows Gideon to operate with impunity across systems that should be under democratic control. The transitional government has too many problems and too few resources to hunt down every Imperial warlord who's carved out a personal kingdom from the Empire's corpse. Bo-Katan's determination to reclaim the Darksaber drives her to increasingly desperate measures. She knows that as long as Gideon holds the weapon, scattered Mandalorian survivors will never unite behind her leadership. The blade's authority transcends personal loyalty or military skill. The stage is set for a confrontation that will determine the Darksaber's future and the fate of Mandalorian culture. Ancient traditions about winning weapons in combat will face modern realities about power and legitimacy. Din Djarin's involvement adds complications that nobody anticipates. Gideon has held the Darksaber for years, using it to build an empire from Imperial remnants and local fear. But some traditions are stronger than military force, and some debts demand payment regardless of the cost. The weapon that brought him power is about to bring him enemies he can't defeat through intimidation alone. The Mandalorian creed demands that the Darksaber be won in fair combat. Soon, that ancient law will face its greatest test when warriors who understand honor challenge a warlord who only understands victory. Sometimes the most important moments in history happen to people who never wanted to make history at all. Din Djarin is about to become the owner of the galaxy's most legendary weapon by complete accident. The rescue mission seems straightforward enough. Din Djarin needs to save Grogu from Imperial captivity, while Bo-Katan wants to reclaim the Darksaber from the man who destroyed her world. Their goals align perfectly for a joint operation against Moff Gideon's light cruiser. Bo-Katan makes her conditions clear from the beginning. She'll help Din rescue the child, but she needs to be the one who defeats Gideon in combat. Only by winning the Darksaber through legitimate battle can she restore her claim to lead the scattered remnants of Mandalorian civilization. The plan makes sense to everyone involved. Bo-Katan has the experience and motivation to face Gideon directly. Din gets the military support he needs to penetrate Imperial defenses. The Alliance serves both their interests while following ancient Mandalorian traditions about how power should change hands. But plans have a way of falling apart the moment they meet reality. Din reaches Grogu's cell first, driven by desperation to save the child who's become like a son to him. He finds Moff Gideon standing over the young prisoner with the Darksaber ignited, its black blade crackling inches from Grogu's head. The threat is obvious and immediate. Gideon plays the moment perfectly, pretending to cooperate while positioning himself for treachery. He acts like he's willing to let Din take Grogu and leave peacefully, as if the whole confrontation can be resolved without violence. The performance is designed to lower Din's guard at the worst possible moment. The attack comes when Din turns his back to pick up Grogu. Gideon swings the Darksaber down in a strike meant to end the fight before it begins, targeting the vulnerable spot between Din's helmet and shoulder armor. It should be an easy kill against an opponent who's focused on protecting a child instead of defending himself. But Gideon has forgotten something crucial about Mandalorian culture. Their armor isn't just protective equipment, it's a statement of identity that connects them to ancestors who fought the Jedi for centuries. Din's Beskar plates and spear represent traditions that predate the Empire by generations. The Darksaber's blade meets Beskar metal and stops cold. Sparks fly as ancient Mandalorian craftsmanship proves its worth against the weapon that's killed so many of their warriors over the centuries. For the first time in the blade's history, it faces material designed specifically to resist lightsaber attacks. The shock on Gideon's face is perfect. He's built his entire strategy around the Darksaber's reputation as an unstoppable weapon. The idea that ordinary armor could deflect its strikes never occurred to someone who sees power only in terms of fear and intimidation. Din's counterattack comes immediately, driven by protective instincts that override any concern for his own safety. The Beskar spear in his hands moves with deadly precision, each thrust aimed at disabling rather than killing. He's not fighting for conquest or revenge, just trying to save an innocent child from a monster. The duel that follows showcases two completely different approaches to combat. Gideon wields the Darksaber with theatrical flourishes designed to intimidate enemies and impress observers. Every swing carries the weight of his ego and his need to prove dominance over anyone who challenges him. Din fights with practical efficiency learned through years of bounty hunting dangerous targets. His movements waste no energy on display, focusing entirely on neutralizing threats and completing objectives. The Beskar spear becomes an extension of his will, blocking attacks while creating openings for decisive counterstrikes. The confined space of the prison cell works against Gideon's fighting style. The Darksaber needs room for the sweeping attacks that made it legendary, but the narrow corridors prevent him from using his full range of motion. Din's spear work adapts better to close-quarters combat. Grogu watches from the corner, his young eyes taking in a battle that will shape his understanding of courage and sacrifice. The sight of someone risking everything to protect him creates bonds that will influence his choices for years to come. The end comes when Din's practical training overcomes Gideon's reliance on intimidation. A clever maneuver knocks the Darksaber from the Moff's grasp while the Beskar spear finds its way to his throat. The weapon that brought Gideon power becomes a useless piece of metal lying on the floor. Din's victory follows Mandalorian law exactly. He defeated the Darksaber's previous owner in single combat, making him its rightful wielder according to traditions that go back over 1,000 years. The fact that he never wanted the weapon doesn't change the legal reality of his claim. The revelation hits Bo-Katan like a physical blow when she sees Din carrying the Darksaber and leading Gideon in custody. Her carefully planned mission has succeeded in every way except the one that matters most to her. The weapon she's spent years trying to reclaim now belongs to someone who doesn't even understand its significance. Gideon's mocking explanation of Mandalorian law adds insult to injury. He understands the traditions that bind Bo-Katan better than she hoped, using her own cultural beliefs as weapons to create division among his captors. The blade must be won in battle, he explains with obvious satisfaction. Din's attempt to simply give Bo-Katan the Darksaber reveals how little he understands about Mandalorian politics. To him, the weapon is just a tool that belongs with someone who can use it properly. The idea that its ownership carries mystical or legal significance seems like unnecessary complication. But Bo-Katan can't accept the gift, even though she wants it desperately. The last time she took the Darksaber without earning it properly, the Empire destroyed her world and slaughtered her people. She won't risk bringing that curse down on anyone again. The standoff on the bridge creates an impossible situation. Din holds a weapon he doesn't want, while Bo-Katan stares at something she needs but can't accept. Ancient traditions clash with practical necessities, while everyone involved understands that the wrong choice could have consequences lasting generations. The attack by Dark Trooper droids ends the confrontation before anyone can resolve the dilemma. Luke Skywalker's arrival shifts everyone's attention from Mandalorian politics to immediate survival. By the time the crisis passes, the moment for decision-making has passed as well. Din emerges from the mission as the inadvertent owner of the galaxy's most politically significant weapon. He rescued Grogu and helped capture Gideon, but he's also inherited responsibilities he never sought and doesn't understand. Bo-Katan's disappointment is visible but controlled. She's lost another chance to reclaim leadership of her people through legitimate means. The Darksaber remains tantalizingly close but legally beyond her reach until she can earn it through combat. The weapon that has passed through so many hands over the centuries now rests with someone who represents hope for a different kind of Mandalorian future. Djarin may not understand the burden he's inherited, but he's proven worthy of it through actions rather than bloodline or political maneuvering. Owning a legendary weapon when you never wanted it creates problems that go way beyond simple combat training. Djarin is about to learn that the Darksaber comes with baggage he never signed up for. The months after Gideon's defeat pass in a strange blur for Din. He carries the Darksaber because he has to, but every time he looks at the weapon he remembers that it belongs to someone else. The black blade represents traditions he barely understands and responsibilities he never sought. His first attempts to use the Darksaber in real combat go worse than anyone expects. During a routine bounty hunt, Din faces a group of criminals who think they can take on a lone Mandalorian. They're wrong about winning the fight, but they're right about one thing. Din handles the ancient weapon like someone trying to swing a tree branch. The blade feels impossibly heavy in his hands, fighting his attempts to control its movements. What should be graceful becomes clumsy, What should be precise becomes dangerous. At one point during the brawl, Din's own momentum carries the Darksaber's edge into his thigh, slicing through his armor like it's made of cloth. The self-inflicted wound teaches him something important about the weapon he's inherited. The Darksaber doesn't just cut through enemies, it cuts through anything that gets in its way, including the person trying to wield it when they don't know what they're doing. The embarrassing incident forces Din to seek help from people who understand Mandalorian traditions better than he does. His old covert has relocated to a new hiding place, but the armorer and Vizsla welcome him back, despite his recent troubles with Imperial forces. The armorer's explanation of the Darksaber's history hits Din like a punch to the gut. She tells him about the curse that supposedly follows the weapon when it's not earned through proper combat. If the blade falls into undeserving hands, Mandalore will be laid to waste. The words carry extra weight because everyone knows what happened to Bo-Katan. She accepted the Darksaber as a gift from Sabine instead of winning it in battle. Soon after, the Empire launched the Great Purge that destroyed Mandalorian civilization. Many survivors blame the curse for their people's suffering. Din realizes he's carrying more than just a weapon. He's inherited a symbol that comes with supernatural baggage and political implications that could affect millions of lives. The responsibility weighs on him more heavily than the blade itself. Training with the armorer reveals why the Darksaber feels so difficult to control. The weapon responds to its wielder's mental state in ways that normal lightsabers don't. Inner conflict makes it heavier, self-doubt makes it clumsy, emotional turmoil makes it dangerous to everyone around. Din's personal struggles work against his attempts to master the blade. His exile from his original clan for removing his helmet creates guilt that manifests as physical weight. Every swing of the Darksaber becomes harder as his doubts compound the weapon's resistance. The armorer tries to teach him techniques for attuning himself to the blade's energy, but progress comes slowly. Din's mind is too cluttered with regrets and uncertainties for the kind of mental clarity the weapon demands. He's fighting himself as much as he's fighting the Darksaber. The challenge from Vizsla comes at the worst possible time. The descendant of Vizsla believes the Darksaber belongs to him by right of blood and tradition. His claim has validity that Din can't argue against. The weapon was created by Paz's ancestor and passed down through his family line for generations. The duel on Glavis Ringworld becomes a test of more than just combat skills. Din faces someone who has legitimate reasons to carry the Darksaber, while he struggles with a weapon that doesn't want to cooperate. Paz fights with the confidence of someone reclaiming his birthright. The battle is vicious in ways that surprise both combatants. Paz uses traditional Mandalorian weapons designed to exploit the weaknesses of lightsaber wielders. His shield deflects strikes, while his vibroblade creates threats that force Din to defend from multiple angles simultaneously. At one point during the fight, Paz actually manages to grab the Darksaber away from Din. For a moment, it looks like the weapon will return to the bloodline that created it. But Din's desperation and practical combat experience turn the tide against his opponent's superior claim and training. The victory feels hollow despite its importance. Din proves his right to carry the Darksaber according to Mandalorian law, but he's also defeated someone whose arguments made perfect sense. Paz's desire to restore his family's weapon to its proper place deserved better than losing to an accidental owner. The armorer's discovery that Din removed his helmet changes everything about his relationship with the covert. Breaking the creed means exile from the community that's been training him to use the Darksaber properly. He leaves with the weapon, but loses the support system he needs to master it. Walking away from the covert with the Darksaber at his side, Din becomes the loneliest person in the galaxy. He's an apostate carrying the most important symbol of Mandalorian leadership. No community will fully accept him, but everyone expects him to live up to standards he can barely understand. His subsequent use of the Darksaber in combat shows gradual improvement mixed with persistent limitations. Fighting alongside Boba Fett against the Pike Syndicate, Din manages to wield the weapon effectively enough to help win battles. But his technique lacks the finesse that truly skilled users demonstrate. The encounter with Scorpionic droids proves that raw power isn't always enough. Din hacks at their shields with determination, but little effect until circumstances create openings he can exploit. The Darksaber remains formidable, but it's not a magic solution to every tactical problem. Through all these trials, Din carries the burden of the Darksaber with growing respect for its history and significance. He may not want to lead Mandalore, but he understands that the weapon represents something larger than his personal preferences. The responsibility shapes him in ways he doesn't always appreciate. The armorer's teaching about the blade being as heavy as its wielder's doubts becomes a constant reminder of his internal struggles. Every time Din questions his worthiness or competence, the Darksaber becomes harder to control. The weapon forces him to confront his own limitations. Despite his growing skill and understanding, Din continues to express his desire to give the Darksaber to someone who actually wants it. He sees himself as a temporary guardian rather than a permanent owner. The blade deserves someone who can embrace its full potential. But the galaxy has other plans for djarin and the weapon he's inherited. Events are moving that will test both his resolve and his relationship with Bo-Katan in ways that neither of them anticipates. The Darksaber's journey through his hands is far from over. Bo-Katan is about to discover that the Darksaber was always meant to return to her hands. Djarin makes a pilgrimage to Mandalore that changes everything. The devastated homeworld calls to him as the only place where he can find redemption in the living waters, washing away the sin of removing his helmet. He brings the Darksaber with him, still struggling to master a weapon that fights him at every turn. The ruins of Sundari stretch out like a graveyard of broken dreams. Buildings that once housed millions of Mandalorians now stand empty and crumbling. Monuments to imperial cruelty and the price of resistance. The planet feels dead in ways that go beyond simple destruction. Din's encounter with the strange Alamite creatures proves that Mandalore holds dangers beyond imperial forces. These bizarre life forms have adapted to the poisoned environment left behind by the Great Purge, becoming predators that hunt anything foolish enough to venture into their territory. The Darksaber feels as heavy and uncooperative as ever in Din's hands. He swings the ancient weapon with determination but little grace, each strike requiring more effort than it should. The blade that flowed like water for masters like Bo-Katan becomes a burden that weighs him down during combat. The cyborg monstrosity lurking in Mandalore's minds represents something worse than natural evolution. This mechanical horror has been created from the fusion of organic and artificial components, a twisted experiment that embodies everything wrong with imperial science applied to living beings. Din's capture happens so quickly that he barely has time to defend himself. The cyborg's superior strength and mechanical enhancements overwhelm his Mandalorian training and equipment. The creature tosses the Darksaber aside like worthless scrap while imprisoning its defeated opponent in a cage. Grogu's mission to fetch help becomes a desperate race against time. The young Force user understands that Din is in mortal danger and that only one person has the skills and motivation to mount a successful rescue. He finds Bo-Katan and leads her back to the mines where his guardian waits for salvation. Bo-Katan's arrival transforms the situation immediately. She engages the cyborg with tactical brilliance and combat skills honed through decades of warfare. But more importantly, she spots the Darksaber lying discarded on the mine floor like a fallen star waiting to be reclaimed. The moment when Bo-Katan summons the Darksaber to her hand using her grappling line creates perfect poetry. The weapon flies through the air to reunite with someone who understands its true nature and potential. After years of separation, the blade and its rightful wielder come together again. The difference in fighting styles becomes obvious the instant Bo-Katan ignites the Darksaber. Where Din struggled with clumsy swings and uncertain movements, she displays mastery that comes from deep understanding. The weapon flows like an extension of her will, cutting through the cyborg's defenses with surgical precision. The cyborg that defeated Djarin dies in seconds under Bo-Katan's assault. Her blade work demonstrates why she once led Mandalorian forces against the Empire and why scattered clans still look to her for leadership. The Darksaber responds to her touch with eager cooperation, but Bo-Katan's decision to return the weapon to Din reveals the depth of her character. She could claim the blade by right of combat, having defeated the creature that bested its previous wielder. Instead, she treats Din's ownership as legitimate and hands the weapon back without argument. The gesture shows respect for Mandalorian traditions and personal honor. Bo-Katan won't take the Darksaber through technicalities or clever interpretations of ancient law. She wants to earn it properly or not at all, even if that means continuing to live in exile from her rightful place as Mandalore. Din's unconsciousness during the crucial fight creates a legal ambiguity that will become important later. He doesn't witness Bo-Katan's victory over the cyborg, so he can't immediately acknowledge the transfer of the blade's allegiance. The technicality preserves his claim while establishing hers. The reunion of scattered Mandalorian factions on Plazir 15 provides the stage for resolving the Darksaber's ownership once and for all. Bo-Katan faces axe woves in single combat for leadership of the mercenary fleet, proving her worth through skill and determination rather than political maneuvering. Her victory over Axe establishes her capability to command, but it doesn't solve the fundamental problem of legitimacy. Mandalorian warriors respect strength, but they follow symbols. Without the Darksaber, Bo-Katan remains just another talented fighter with leadership ambitions. Axe's refusal to fully acknowledge her authority reflects the pragmatic reality of Mandalorian politics. Ancient traditions matter more than personal relationships when determining who has the right to lead entire civilizations. The sword makes the ruler, not the other way around. Din's public resolution of the ownership question demonstrates wisdom that goes beyond his formal education. He understands that Bo-Katan needs the Darksaber more than he does, and he finds a way to give it to her that satisfies both legal requirements and personal honor. The argument about transitive combat victory makes perfect sense to warriors who live by codes of honor. Bo-Katan defeated the creature that defeated Din, making her the victor by extension. The logic satisfies Mandalorian law while acknowledging Din's generous spirit. The ceremonial transfer of the Darksaber creates a moment of perfect closure. Din presents the weapon to Bo-Katan not as a gift, but as a return of stolen property. She earned it through combat, and he's simply acknowledging what everyone should have recognized from the beginning. Bo-Katan's ignition of the Darksaber for the final time in this saga marks the end of years of wandering and uncertainty. The weapon blazes with dark energy that seems brighter than before, as if the blade itself celebrates finding its way home to worthy hands. The assembled Mandalorians who bow to acknowledge Bo-Katan's leadership represent factions that have been divided since the Great Purge. Children of the Watch and Night Owls unite under the ancient symbol that transcends their theological differences about Mandalorian identity. With the Darksaber held high and united forces at her command, Bo-Katan leads the first serious attempt to reclaim Mandalore from Imperial occupation. The weapon that once brought her people together under Vizsla will now serve the same purpose under his spiritual successor. The circle closes as the blade returns to someone who can fulfill its original purpose. Bo-Katan holds the Darksaber not through accident or gift, but through legitimate combat victory witnessed by her peers. The weapon has finally found its way back to where it belongs. After more than 1,000 years of history, the galaxy's most legendary weapon is about to meet its end in the most brutal way possible. Some symbols are destroyed not by time or neglect, but by the pure hatred of those who fear what they represent. Bo-Katan leads the assault to retake Mandalore with the Darksaber blazing in her hand. United Mandalorian forces pour into the Great Forge, the ancient heart of their civilization that Moff Gideon has turned into his secret fortress. The weapon that once forged their people's greatest traditions now cuts through enemies trying to keep them enslaved. The battle rages through tunnels where Mandalorian smiths once created armor and weapons that made their warriors legendary across the galaxy. Now those same passages echo with blaster fire and the clash of the Darksaber against Imperial technology. History repeats itself as the Black Blade fights to free its people once more. Bo-Katan moves through the fighting like a force of nature unleashed. The Darksaber flows with her movements as she cuts down Imperial troopers wearing Beskar armor stolen from dead Mandalorians. Each strike reclaims something that belongs to her people while moving closer to the heart of Gideon's operation. Deep in the fortress, she finds the man who destroyed her world waiting for her. Moff Gideon has encased himself in a Dark Trooper exoskeleton made from Beskar alloy, turning Mandalorian craftsmanship into a weapon against its creators. The armor gives him inhuman strength and protection that even the Darksaber might struggle to penetrate. The final duel begins with words as sharp as any blade. Gideon sneers that Mandalorians are weak without their trinkets, trying to break Bo-Katan's spirit before the fighting starts. He wants her to believe that symbols and traditions are worthless against superior technology and ruthless ambition. Bo-Katan's response comes through action rather than argument. The Darksaber ignites with dark energy that illuminates the chamber as she proves that some traditions are worth dying for. The ancient weapon meets modern armor in a clash that sends sparks flying across the walls. The fight is everything that both combatants have been preparing for since the Great Purge began. Bo-Katan carries the weight of her dead sister, her destroyed homeworld, and every Mandalorian who suffered under Imperial rule. Gideon fights with the confidence of someone who thinks he's already won by breaking his enemy's spirit. But the Dark Trooper armor gives Gideon advantages that skill alone can't overcome. Servo motors multiply his strength while energy shields deflect strikes that should cripple him. His electrostaff creates additional threats that force Bo-Katan to divide her attention between offense and defense. The tide turns when Gideon abandons elegant combat for brute force tactics. He grabs Bo-Katan's hand while she's gripping the Darksaber, using his armor's enhanced strength to crush both weapon and wielder together. The mechanical fingers close with enough pressure to shatter bone and metal alike. The sound of the Darksaber's hilt crumpling fills the chamber like a scream. Over 1,000 years of history gets mangled in Gideon's fist as the weapon that united Mandalorian clans becomes a broken piece of scrap. The kyber crystal that powered the blade shatters under pressure that no organic hand could apply. The legendary weapon dies with a sputter of failing energy. The black blade that cut through countless enemies and lit the way for Mandalorian warriors across the centuries flickers and goes dark forever. Bo-Katan watches her people's greatest symbol get murdered by the man who's already taken everything else from them. Gideon's satisfaction at destroying the Darksaber reveals everything about his character. He believes that breaking symbols breaks the people who follow them. The weapon's destruction should shatter Mandalorian resistance and prove that Imperial power trumps ancient traditions. But Bo-Katan's spirit doesn't break with her weapon. The pain in her crushed hand reminds her that some things matter more than symbols. Djarin's words echo in her memory about Mandalorians being stronger together. The blade was important, but the people it represented are what truly matter. The final battle against Gideon becomes a team effort that proves his understanding of Mandalorian culture was always flawed. Bo-Katan, Djarin, and Grogu worked together to defeat an enemy who thought superior technology could overcome superior spirit. Gideon dies in the explosion that destroys his base, along with his dreams of ruling through fear. Standing on Mandalore's surface after the victory, Bo-Katan and Din look out over a world that can finally heal from decades of Imperial occupation. Survivors from all the scattered clans gather to begin rebuilding their civilization from the ashes of tragedy. The Darksaber's remnants get retrieved from the wreckage, but the weapon is beyond any hope of repair. The ancient blade that passed through so many hands and witnessed so much history has finally reached the end of its journey. Its destruction marks the end of an era that began with Vizsla's vision of unity. But the weapon's legacy lives on in ways that Gideon never understood. Mandalorians don't follow the Darksaber because it's powerful. They follow it because it represents their shared identity and common purpose. With those things intact, they don't need a blade to tell them who they are. Bo-Katan's leadership gains legitimacy through actions rather than symbols. She united fractured clans, defeated their greatest enemy, and liberated their homeworld. The Darksaber helped her accomplish those goals, but it wasn't the source of her authority. The weapon that began as Vizsla's attempt to bridge two cultures ends with Mandalorians choosing unity over division. They carry forward the blade story even as the physical artifact joins the countless other relics that litter the galaxy's battlefields. From creation to destruction, the Darksaber shaped the destiny of an entire civilization. Heroes and villains wielded its power for their own purposes, but the weapon itself remained constant. It represented the hope that scattered people could become something greater than the sum of their parts. That hope survives, even though the blade does not. Mandalorians rebuild their world, carrying the memory of what the Darksaber represented. The Darksaber's journey ends where it began, with Mandalorians united around shared values and common purpose. The 1,000-year circle closes as the weapon that forged their identity disappears into legend, leaving behind people strong enough to write their own future.